Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Happy Friday. I'm here live on Friday, March 27th, 2026. We are doing full moon in Libra astrology readings. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up and like the stream, share it out, let other people know that we're live. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. That way you guys can see more of my videos. I'm always here live on Fridays around 6 p.m. Central Time. We alternate between every other Friday for tarot or astrology. This week, I'm answering your guys' questions about your natal charts, the full moon in Libra, and everything in between. If you guys are watching this on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm no longer live, so I'm sorry I missed you. Please don't send payments for readings, otherwise you will get refunded. And I hope to catch you guys here next week for live tarot. If you guys have never gotten a reading before, welcome. My name's Candace. I'm a Western astrologer and a tarot reader. I do intuitive Western astrology readings. I use the Sabian symbols and all kinds of other techniques to make predictions about what's going on in your chart. And if you want to get in the queue and get a reading, scan this QR code. It's going to take you to my PayPal. Please, 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 in the memo box, make sure when you make your donation for your reading that you put your question. So if you just want to know about the full moon in Libra, let me know. If you have a specific timing question or something about your natal chart, please put that information in there. And I also need to know the exact date, time, and location of where you were born. Now I'm here in the United States, so if you can spell out your month for me, so that way I make sure I get that information correct, it'd be really helpful. And also let me know if you're in the chat, and if you guys want to join my memberships, you guys can join Level 4 today. Level 4 supports me as a full-time content creator. It also makes it possible for me to kind of do these lives. You're gonna get my daily horoscope club where you can get daily horoscopes that you get access to in Level 4 and Level 3, but you're also going to support me and you're gonna get a shout out and you get a reading once a month. You can choose tarot or astrology. Great way to stay connected with me, and we take our Level 4 members first. So I know we've got a bunch of people who are already in the chat, so I'm going to say hi to everybody. Thank you guys for waiting. So what's going on, KK Marley? Welcome to Level 4. Thanks for joining. What's up, Cavatem? She says, excited for April. Amanda's here. I've got you, girl. Thanks for being a member. Welcome back, Stephanie. I'll be answering your questions for you. What's up, Lisa? I got your question. Dana Diamond, I got your question. We do charge $55 for readings for donations, just so you guys know, in Super Chat. So if you want to get the reading, you just have to pay the difference for that. And then Major Gray's here. What's up, Major? Thanks for joining for the first time. Okay, Diana, let me know what your question is if you have a specific question. I see you're coming back to LA from Vegas, so your service is a little wonky. That's always a fun trip between those two cities. What's up, Paloma? I got you. What's up, what is that? Venus? Am I saying that right? Tarot and astrology. Thanks for joining. What's up? What's up, Corey? What's going on? How is everybody doing on Friday, or depending on where you are? So, Rosie, thank you, my dear. I will put you. I actually have you on my list. So you joined memberships and you got a reading, just to confirm, because I've got you on both. What's up, Lori? So basically, I got a bunch of people in the queue. These sometimes get a little busy, so I appreciate your guys' patience. I answer my questions in the order that they were kind of sent in. We will let you guys know when we're gonna shut down the readings. There's a clock here. It says 12 minutes and change. So when that timer is up, we're not taking any more readings. So get in before we do last call if you guys wanna get your reading. And we always start with Level 4 members first. So if you guys hear your name, that means I have you in the queue. Your chart is already ready to go. And then I'll work through this list and I'll call out your names, kind of a couple in advance, so you know your reading is coming up. Sometimes it takes a minute to get your reading, especially if you're at the end of the list. So if you can't stay, no worries. We leave these videos up on the channel. Your reading will be here forever on YouTube land. So you can come back to these readings and you can leave me comments. Let me know what happens. Give me some feedback. And let's get on with the list. So for my Level 4 members that I have, Amanda, Stephanie, Marley, Rosie, and Diana. And then for those of you guys who got in the queue, we've got Jasmine, Danielle, Claudine, Maritza, Paloma, Lisa, and then it looks like we also have Dana that got in on the Super Chat, but there's always stuff that's changing. So let me see if there's anybody else that kind of popped in here. Diana says general reading. Got it. Okay, thanks, Rosie, number 2 in the same month. Waiting for your reading. Please let your number in the queue. Sure. And we did have a couple more people pop in here. So I also got, after Lisa and Alana, I've got Mayad and also Talton. Okay, so if you heard your name, I've got you. Rosie says, I have my time for my ritual Beyond the Veil live donuts. Oh my gosh, invite me over. That's my favorite sweet treat. All right, so we're gonna start first with our level 4 people. So Amanda, Stephanie, Marley, Rosie, and Diana, you guys are gonna be first. We're gonna start first with Amanda. And let me pull up her info because she sent me a little love note. I laughed when I saw that come in. And Amanda's born January 2nd, 85. So she's Virgo rising. She's got her moon in Taurus, her sun in Capricorn. And she says, cashing in, hey girl, look at my chart and give me your wonderful insights. I know we will soon have a lot of planets transiting in Aries. How might that affect me? How do I use these energies? You know, I'm still waiting for Mr. Right. All right, so just full disclaimer for everybody who's watching, April is going to be a lot, okay? So if you're not getting a reading, I highly recommend going and listening to my horoscopes that I have for April, because it's gonna give you a lot of insight in terms of how this cluster of what's gonna be at some points like 7 planets that are gonna be in Aries. So it's gonna be pretty crazy. Basically, I'm a Placidus user, Amanda, you know that, but there is a possibility that some of the stuff that is kind of showing up, even though it's in your Placidus 7th house, is going to kind of bring up some of the themes of the 8th house. So I guess I have to kind of put that out there, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. We're gonna have planets crossing that 0-degree mark. So you're gonna see a little bit of a combination of brave new beginnings when it comes to relationships and possibly meeting new people and connecting with new people. We're also going to be seeing it picking up some of the energies of the 8th house, because you're gonna be seeing in April your 8th house lord, Mars, is gonna go through the 7th house. So the positive is that this could make it very passionate. There could be things that could happen quite quickly. This is also going to be a time that's going to be very karmic, because Saturn is going to be moving through there. And so will your chart ruler. So by the time Mercury is getting up into Aries, so let's kind of scan ahead here. It's going to be a little bit. First, you'll see Mars enter into your 7th house. That's going to be right around April 9th. So that's kind of initiating that Saturn-Neptune conjunction we saw in February. So it's like new beginnings, new karmic lessons, meeting with new people, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. The positive is that Aries is going to start something new, and you have Mars going through its home sign. So you can see suddenly people just start showing up into your life, and you'll be able to tell, because when Mars is in your 7th house, you'll be meeting people who are more fit and athletic. You'll be meeting people who are going to be a little bit more direct and a little bit more feisty. There's definitely a really strong kind of magnetic vibe with Mars being there. I've always noticed, like, when Mars goes through my 7th house as a Libra rising, there's always something that happens where it's just like either you're having to confront someone, or suddenly somebody comes into your life, and then there's going to be like a lot more togetherness. Where it gets a little choppy is you're going to see that it's going to first come into conjunction with Neptune, which is your traditional 7th house lord. So when that conjunction happens around the 12th, you have to be more cautious and careful about new people that you're meeting. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily like negative, but you can meet somebody and you could be like, oh, where do they come from? Like, what's the catch? Like, why are they so persistent? Like, what do they want? And you have to kind of feel them out, right? So it's about feeling out whoever's kind of coming in around, the 12th of April, give or take a couple of days on each side. Then you're going to see when it starts to separate from Neptune, there will be a several-day period from the 12th for a couple of days where Mars is going to be in between Neptune and Saturn. So I kind of feel like you might meet somebody who's very eager, and then you're going to be like, let me feel this out and make sure that this is like a solid match. Really pay attention to like the 15th, even like the 16th of April when the moon's going through there. And then you're going to see a triple conjunction between Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. And it's at a 7, by the way. So it's like as if having Mars conjunct Saturn at a 7 wasn't karmic enough in terms of relationships. Throw your chart ruler into the mix, and now Mercury is going to be there. So it's going to represent you being in a situation where you might be meeting somebody and they're wanting to kind of progress ahead pretty quickly, and you're having like serious conversations about what you're looking for, what you want. I would also observe that it might be people who are not just like physically active and athletic, but it could be people who are like military. It could be people who have maybe worked as like cops, firemen, police officers. People who are in uniform can be very Mars Saturn. So like, you know, I don't know, maybe you want to take a stroll around like the neighborhood fire station, you know, something like that. I mean, like, I know that sounds silly, but like you could meet somebody that way. And there is another side to this because Saturn is serious. It's about serious conversations with Mercury and also Saturn. Or somebody who's a little bit more direct, they're mature, they're stern, they know what they want. And then obviously Mars is going to be there too. So I'm thinking that it's very likely that you're going to see something that's really going to start picking up pretty quickly. But you need to make sure that their words and their actions are kind of like matching. And you also want to make sure that this is somebody who's not coming on too strong. And you don't have to do anything. Like whatever is going to happen under this conjunction karmically is going to bring somebody into your orbit. The other way of looking at this is it can mean that you're meeting somebody who's like kind of in the process of starting over or starting something new. They could be saying, well, I just started a new job. I just moved here. You know, I'm new to this area. And it's also going to be somebody who's going to be probably pretty masculine and like pretty confident, because I think like the Mercury, Saturn, Mars is somebody who's just a little bit more like, you know, direct and assertive and like kind of like machismo. So when these planets start to separate and the dust starts to settle, then you'll be able to kind of see who came in, whether or not you like them, if it was a match or not. Obviously, we need to see something really strong happening with Jupiter for there to be a relationship that develops. And that's because Jupiter also was kind of connected to your 7th house. So while these planets are kind of clustered together in the sky, you're going to see the moon and Jupiter coming into conjunction, and it's going to be squaring that. So that's why I have a feeling it's going to be like you meeting somebody who just moved or who's just like new in the area. We'll also see Venus coming into conjunction with Uranus right around the same time, squaring your natal Venus and opposing your natal Saturn. Like, for example, you know, I've told everybody, you know, especially my late degree Virgo risings, my Libra risings, I'm like, whatever is happening in mid-April is like super karmic, and it can be really good where if you have learned the lessons of Saturn so far and you have recognized and realized that you cannot chase people or that you cannot change people, you might actually have a breakthrough and then realize, wow, somebody popped into my life and like now I'm being rewarded because I was willing to cut loose some of the old relationships that weren't working. On the other hand, you may potentially see that there's going to be some issues where, you know, people who could be coming in that are just pushy, and you're like, no, this is reminding me of stuff with like exes. This is like, I'm being tested. You have to kind of keep your wits about yourself and just wait until after you get through like the mid kind of like April period. There will be decent transits also over the summer. So you're going to find that when Jupiter is going, for example, into your 11th house, you're going to start seeing like Venus coming up next to Jupiter in mid-June. You're going to see Mercury retrograde, short of a conjunction with Jupiter. And then you'll have another kind of peak period right around here where Mercury and Jupiter are going to meet under an eclipse in August. And that'll trine Saturn. So you'll either see a scenario where somebody comes in that you're kind of like, too pushy, not my cup of tea, or I need a little bit of time to feel it out. Or, you know, you'll just take your time getting to know somebody, and then over the summer it could develop into, you know, meeting their friends, them meeting you, their friends meeting you. And if you aren't crazy about what shows up over like the next 6 weeks, the next real window of opportunity is going to probably be about July going into August. When those eclipses happen with Jupiter and Mercury in your 11th house, you're meeting new friends, connecting with new people, there's new communities. And that's trining Saturn in your 7th house. So it could mean that through a new relationship, you're connecting with new people, but it could also mean that you have friends that are trying to set you up with someone, or maybe someone who you're in a friendship with can become more of a relationship. There's still other things that are going to be going on in the sky, but I think that why this is going to be such a prominent period is the North Node is actually coming into conjunction with your Venus. And that tells me that it could be a younger person, it could be somebody who's more kind of unconventional and different. It's a period of really like leaning into romance and having fun and like creating. And it's going to be like an awesome transit. And it's very different than having had Saturn and Neptune, I think, along your descendant over the last year. It's been a lot about wrapping up old relationships, opening the door for somebody new. And at the same time, you're going to find that your natal Neptune and your natal Jupiter are now finally coming out of some of the squares. You will no longer have Jupiter opposed Jupiter, where it's trying to get you to focus on community, not dating. You're no longer going to have Saturn and Neptune, you know, that have been kind of like assaulting your Jupiter off and on. And it's been trying to kind of, in a way, like get you to stay grounded and stay in one place and not expand out of where you've been living or who you would potentially like consider living with. And it's been trying to keep you landlocked in one location, so that way you can keep an open mind for new people who are coming into your life who you could potentially be dating. Uranus is also still dancing with your moon and your north node. So that's also saying that there is a push for you to kind of let go and like release of old outdated ways of like emotional attachment styles. And that's also been squaring your Venus. So that's brought up a lot of like inconsistencies and back and forth with obviously emotional connections. And it's been squaring your natal Saturn. So there's been a lot of like changes in relationships, things not really kind of sticking, getting kind of frustrated because you feel like you're meeting people who just don't value you the way that you want to be valued. It hits your self-esteem. And now finally all these planets start to kind of unlock and they release their grips of like the oppositions and the squares, because I think it's trying to get you into a place where Jupiter can enhance your goals and also your dreams, and you can have more fun, you can have more creativity. So I would be focusing on like social connections this year. I feel like even if you're not necessarily in a committed relationship by the summer, that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in August and some of the trines to Saturn are really saying that you're going to feel full, like you're going to be complete, because you're going to have a lot more support, and there's going to be connections with people, and you're going to feel fulfilled, where it's not just about those romantic one-on-one relationships. It's going to be platonic relationships that are also kind of doing a lot of the same thing, right? So I mean, like all of August, like, and I said this in my horoscopes. I was like, as soon as the full moon comes through on the 1st, it's setting the stage for a full moon that's going to oppose the sun. And it's kind of like Libra, okay, relationships, harmony, and balance. But if you look at where Venus is in your 5th house, where you're like, ooh, am I afraid to be like in love again? You know, am I afraid to like create and like be vulnerable? And there's also this craving for like authenticity. So I would be also leaning into like hobbies, things that you enjoy doing, like going out and doing things that are more 5th house oriented. So it could be you're going to like, you know, events, festivals, you're going out where there's like people and crowds and being a little bit more like fun and creative. And in doing so, you're going to meet people who are going to be in alignment with you, right? Now you have Saturn sextiling Pluto. So the more that you're focusing on your own inner joy, you're calling somebody in who's like, yes, I can fulfill that for you. But I wish I knew exactly what was going to happen, because this is such an unusual series of planets that are going to be moving through the 7th house. And also we have not seen Saturn and Neptune in Aries in our lifetime. And then you throw, you know, Mars into the mix, which means like, you're going to get tested. Somebody's going to be like, hey, do you want to hook up? Because Saturn deals with like casual relationships, right? Through your 5th house. And then the 7th house is more commitment. So you might also find that you meet somebody that you're like super flirty with, and they're like, oh, no, like I'm looking for something serious. And you're going to be like, oh, okay. Like, and you wouldn't expect them to be so kind of like stern or direct, or maybe even conservative. You can meet people who can be like a little conservative or even older. But don't take that as like a negative thing. It's allowing the relationship to mature without jumping in head first. And if you're in that in April, it'll start to kind of subside as you're getting into like June, July, and August. And then August is going to be the time to really tell when you start seeing some of those trines. So go where the people are. That's the best advice I could tell you. And you're a Capricorn, so you know, Jupiter in opposition to your sun is good for relationships. But even that's saying the same thing, that you're potentially wanting to connect with somebody who's either still trying to move, get their act together, maybe they're trying to get in the right headspace, and they may be in the process of making the changes that need to be made, so that way there could be a better connection in terms of like a commitment moving forward. So soonest, I would say April. Latest, I would say August. But certainly you're going to see a lot of peppered events that are going to happen in between the two transits, which can definitely not only allow you to meet somebody, but I think the 8th house influence is going to be where you're learning to trust again, you're learning to be vulnerable again, or you're open to having like an intimate relationship again after spending, you know, an extended period of time of kind of like healing and working through some of like the old relationship hangups. And something might start very quickly, and then you're like, oh my God, you know, you might get kind of like cold feet. But as long as you're pacing yourself, everything should be fine. So definitely report back. Let me know what happens. All right, so readings are now closed. I'm just catching up on my messages here. Hey, Claudine. Appreciate it. I got your info. I will definitely take a look at that. Thanks, Veronic. I emailed my birth time and data. I can't check my emails when I'm on the live. So sorry, because it's going to pull up on my computer and I have a bunch of screens up. So anytime you guys send your, anytime you get a reading, you have to either send it in PayPal or you have to, if you're doing it on Super Chat, you have to send that in the Super Chat. All right, Grace, I just sent for my reading. So readings are now closed because we just got bombarded, obviously. So we can only take so many people, but Amanda, please report back. I would especially like to hear like right around like the 3rd or the 4th week of April, like who shows up, what happens. All right, so we're gonna move on to Stephanie, and then we've got Marley and Rosie. What's up, Stephanie? What's going on, girl? 29 degrees Libra rising, sun in Cancer, moon in Capricorn. Okay, well, let's see what Stephanie has to say. All right, so you want to know when is a good time to get a surgery during August forward, waiting on a consultation. Okay, and I see where you're doing that surgery. So let's take a look. A couple things. Number one is you're in the finale where now Uranus is leaving that conjunction to Taurus. So Venus rules your body, 8th house can be surgical, alterations, changes, anything that's like aesthetic, like cosmetic, all that stuff. And then Venus is also gonna rule your 8th house, okay? And I've already seen it with the readings. Like a ton of people today are like, I need a surgery, I need a surgery, I need a surgery. I'm just gonna tell you guys point blank, if you give me a very specific time window and you're like, it has to be within these 4 weeks or it has to be at this time, you're not going to get answers that you want out of me. Not because I'm being difficult, but we have Saturn and Mars coming into conjunction. That's not a great time to be getting surgeries, especially if you're trying to do this in April. So I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I would rather be smart about this and safe and make sure you guys are getting good dates. The other thing is the tail end of this year, we're going to have, you know, a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde in Scorpio. So we're going to see a lot of bad surgeries this year is what I'm thinking, and a lot of revisions. And then the beginning of 2027, the shadow is actually going to start in the fall. We're going to see Mars retrograde in Virgo for like 4 months. Okay, it's going to start in Virgo. It's going to come into Leo. So there's very select time periods that are good for getting surgeries. So sorry guys if you already have things planned, but that's why you gotta ideally talk to an astrologer before you book anything. And like surgeons are weird too, like they only work on certain days. So I'm seeing this with a lot of my clients where they're trying to book things that are good astrologically, but you know, surgeons, they're gonna do work the way they want to do it. Anyway, Stephanie's asking for a surgery that's gonna be closer to August. So let's take a look. All right, so let's start in August and let's kind of work our way out. And Stephanie, I don't have a calendar in front of me, so if you could have one handy, so if I'm giving you some dates, you can decide or determine whether they're going to be on the weekends, because I'm purely just looking at the astrology. So when we're doing surgeries, I like to do it when the moon is waning, because it's going to be better for healing. Like you're going to have less bruising, there's going to be less issues in regards to that stuff. So as we're starting the beginning of August, we're going to have a full moon in Aquarius. Then we're going to see the moon waning, but you've got Venus that's going to be going through Virgo. Venus is trining Venus. Mars is going to be squaring Venus. I don't like that. All right, so let's keep moving. We're going to have Venus go. Let's do something like Venus in Libra. And maybe like when Venus is coming into a trine with Uranus would be good. So you're going to see there's no Mercury retrograde on August 7th. So I'm not sure what day that is, but you're going to have the moon going through your 8th house of surgery. Mars is in your 8th house of surgery. It's sextiling the sun. It's trining Venus, and Venus is coming into a conjunction with your Jupiter. So I like this, okay? Venus isn't opposing Saturn. It's not in opposition to Neptune yet. This is doable. It's also, you know, Mars is sextiling your Saturn. I mean, I don't know what day this is in a calendar, but the 7th works. We've also got Mars in conjunction to the moon. I don't like that. And then we've got Mercury coming into an opposition with Pluto. I don't like that. And then we've got the solar eclipse, so that's a no. And then we're going to have the moon coming into conjunction with Venus on your Jupiter in the 8th house and the 12th house of healing. It's going to trine Uranus. Mars is in Cancer, but Mars isn't opposing your moon. It's a Friday. Okay, just so far the 7th of that looks like the best day. And now we've got the moon that's kind of waxing. So let's go after the second eclipse. Venus is still in Libra, but it's getting into shadow. And then we're gonna have Mars on your sun, which I also don't like. So now we're waxing. I know it's still waning. Moon in Taurus, trining the sun in Virgo. Sun's gonna be away from Mars. Sun's no longer squaring Uranus. Venus is squaring your natal Uranus. We're getting kind of like, I mean, it's doable. Let's see what the moon in Cancer looks like. So sun and moon, the sextile. Venus is trining your Saturn. This is also doable. We could do this one September 5th. And then Venus is going to go into Scorpio. So even though Venus is on your ascendant, Venus is now in the sign that it's going to retrograde through. Okay, the 5th is a Saturday. So then we go to the Venus retrograde, which is going to take some time. Venus goes direct, Mercury goes direct. Mars is conjunct the South Node. Mars is opposing your Saturn. Venus trine Mars. I'm not crazy about that, but Mars, Jupiter, sextile Venus. Mars is squaring the sun. Nope. So now we're looking at Mars in Virgo isn't necessarily bad because that's your natal Mars and it's going to bring some kind of precision. Venus is there. Venus is trining Saturn. Moon trine the sun. Mars is kind of coming into a square with Uranus. So I'm thinking maybe something like this. Moon trine Saturn, moon square the sun. But Mars is squaring Uranus. See, that's the problem. Like, I've already done this with clients and there's so many times that are problematic. So now we're moving on. Then Mars is retrograde. Very, very, very slim pickings. So then you're looking at when Mars goes direct. So when Mars is direct in April, you're going to have Venus in Pisces. The Sun and also Saturn will be trining Mars and Jupiter. Uranus isn't squaring your Mars yet. And basically the Venus, sextile your Venus would work. So now you're looking at April of next year. So Venus enters Pisces. We could do something like, let's see, that's going to be a new moon. So let's go back. Yeah, Mars is still retrograde. Venus conjunct Saturn, Uranus off your Venus, Mars is going to be trining Saturn, you're going to see the moon, let's do like the moon in Pisces, sextiling the sun, Venus trine Jupiter, Uranus isn't squaring your Mars yet. You could also do something right around the end of April of next year. So like April 30th, you could do May the 1st. And then we're waiting for Venus. And Venus is trining Jupiter, and it's kind of coming into a trine with Mars. So that's not a bad idea either. And then beyond that, you're looking at May 25th-ish. although that's a Sun-Uranus day, but it is trining Jupiter and it is trining Pluto, so that would work. And then we could also do something like when the Moon and Taurus are together with Venus. And are there any squares? I'm not seeing any. So now we're looking at closer to like the beginning of June of next year. I mean, like it's like this with everybody. You know, everybody who's been contacting me about surgeries, those would be the dates. So if you want to do it, get your consultation probably sooner. So that way you can be like, can we lock in the 7th? Because otherwise you're going to be waiting until much, much later in the year. And like I'm telling everybody right now, because I know that I'm going to have a lot of clients that are going to have issues with reproductive organ issues. They're going to have botched surgeries. There's going to be issues with infection with Mars retrograde in Gemini. No. This is it's this August. It's this August 7th, 2026. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting until some of the other dates that I gave you. It might be out of state. I mean, unless you're fine waiting until the dates that I gave you in April and also in June next year are still great. But it's kind of like especially if you're going to do something like that, because I'm looking at Saturn squaring your moon and also your sun, you have to be very selective about the times that you're going to be doing some of this stuff, because I want to make sure that you're healing okay, basically. 2026, August. So do the consultation sooner so you can try to lock down that date. Otherwise, wait until the dates that I gave you next spring, whether it was like April and June, because you don't want to mess with like the Mars retrograde over your Mars or any of that stuff. And the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde in your first house also could be issues, you know. And it can, if you do this in August, it's probably going to take about 3 months until that Venus and Mercury retrograde are done for you to fully see the effects of it. But like, it's okay. Just, I'm most focused on making sure you're not going to have any issues with complications and that you're going to heal well. So, all right. So hopefully that's helpful, Stephanie. Let me know how it goes if you end up doing the consult. All right. We've got Marley, Rosie, and Diana. What's up, Marley? I know that you're new in these parts. If you guys are asking for your cue, it's going to be a minute. There's quite a few people. But let me just do an update, because I know that we did shut the readings down. Okay, so I got to get through Marley, Rosie, and then Diana. You guys are the members. And then after that, I've got Jasmine, Danielle, Claudine, Maritza, Paloma, Lisa, Dana, Alana, Mayad, Talon, Yara, Grace, and Brenda. So Brenda, you're last. So if you're like Mayad, Talon, Yara, Grace, Brenda, it's going to be at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, at least. All right. Let's see what Marley has to say. She says, hello, does my MC being in Pisces instead of Aries change the way I should be going about getting a job? I've been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, currently going through separation, and I need to start working. I've been trying to decide if I should take a trip first or even somewhere for a new start. Your readings have been on point. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you're thriving through the changes that you're making. So your MC being in Pisces instead of Aries, which she's referencing is Placidus versus whole sign. Okay, so before I even get to that, I just want to share something with you that might be beneficial and really helpful in better understanding your chart. So whole sign and Placidus, they both have some weight, right? But when we use Placidus, sometimes we have something called interceptions. And so if you look at your chart, yes, your MC is Pisces. So it's ruled by Jupiter, so it's more kind of intuitive, emotional, spiritual. It can be about healing, it can be about arts, and it's really highlighting your natal Jupiter. And that Jupiter is highlighting what your quote unquote job or purpose is. Well, Jupiter's in your 5th house. Your job is being a mom, right? So some people might look at this and go, well, you could do something creative, you could do something in childcare, you could do something that's connected to art, there could be something also in entertainment, and then we have to analyze the aspects and everything like that. But usually when you look at a Cancer rising chart, Aries is the 10th house, right? And so when you have Placidus, we have these interceptions, and that's where a house swallows up a sign. So these interceptions work like blind spots. And in my opinion, when you become aware of the interceptions, you learn how to integrate them, and they can kind of help you maybe not fall into the same kind of like pitfalls that come up in those houses. So when you have signs that are intercepted in your 10th and in your 4th, you sometimes like feel like you're getting lost or you're getting confused with what's happening with your career and what's happening with your home. 4th house, home, family, anything that deals with your physical space and your parents sometimes, or parenting duties. 10th house can be, you know, what am I doing out in the world, like career-wise? So it tells me right off the bat, there should be something very unusual about your Mars and also your Venus in your chart. And I haven't even like really picked it apart yet. Aries is me, what I do, who I am out in the world, what my career and my job is. Venus, Libra, you know, what we do together, what we build, how we harmonize. And so if you look at your chart, you have Mars and Venus in conjunction, which is generally pretty favorable, I think, because you've got Mars that's exalted and you've also got all of this very close to your sun. So this is kind of like combust. Positive is that you work hard, right? So I can tell that having all these planets technically in your 6th house, cooking, cleaning, caretaking, assisting, working with animals, things that are connected to having like a service-based business or things that are connected to health are definitely like your forte. And you also have just this massive Capricorn stellium, and like these people work harder than a lot of other people that I've seen. My thought is that if you have your 10th house intercepted and it's in the 6th, in terms of what you start doing, really that's your decision. But I can give you some ideas. Saturn is the dispositor and the ruler of all this Capricorn, and it's in the 9th. And so with Saturn being there, squaring your Pluto and your moon, it tells me that you went the route of being like, okay, I'm being a mom, I'm taking care of my kids. And you may have put on the back burner traveling, right? Saturn in the 9th, education, you know, some kind of training, some kind of certification. And so now there is like this, you know, post Saturn return kind of crisis where now Saturn and Neptune are in your 10th house, and it's in that intercepted spot where you're like, I'm figuring out who I am, like both in a relationship sense, but also in terms of my career. So it's going to be interesting the next 2 years, because you're going to see Saturn going through Aries in your 10th house, and it's squaring your 7th house, which means you're ready to put all of this like chaos of relationship stuff behind you, and you're ready to like stand on your own 2 feet and be like, I'm going to make my own way. So it can be a time where you're going into a new career field. You're a little maybe unsure of how that's going to pan out. You're contemplating whether or not it's something that you can do in juggling your schedule when it comes to taking care of kids, or potentially like dealing with, you know, like your ex and how you guys are figuring out childcare, because that's the 7th house square. Jupiter, being that it rules your 10th house Placidus and it rules your 6th house, I'm like, dude, first of all, if you're going to travel, now is not the time, because the next month is like, oh my God, for Cancer risings, you have to really show up and figure out how you're going to kind of like grow up and like figure out a career. So I feel like if you're going to travel, let's hold off a little bit. You can go and do that maybe in like June, going into July, when you have some retrogrades in your 12th house. I would say anything 6th house related. So working at a gym, working in service or hospitality, walking dogs, doing anything that's going to be connected to cooking, cleaning. Part of me feels inclined to tell you, like, dude, with Jupiter in your 5th house, like, you already have kids. Like, would you consider maybe getting some like CPR certification or health certification or something where you can get licensed so you could do a small daycare where you could be watching kids at your home? So you just maybe add a couple kids to the list, and then you're able to kind of like, you know, like have your needs met. And that's a way to kind of honor that Aries, I can do it myself, kind of independent like mentality, because Jupiter means that you're really good at doing some of that stuff, unless you decide that you want to go into a service industry role, or potentially you want to be, like I said, working with pets or cleaning. You know, you could do those things. You could eventually start a cleaning company with some of those things, or an entertainment company, as weird as it sounds. Or maybe you're renting things that are connected to like party rentals, like chairs, tables, inflatables, anything that's going to be about like party planning. That would also be really good with your chart, or education, or things that deal with kids. So if you're trying to decide if you take a trip first, or even move somewhere before having a new start, moves and movement, I think, are going to be held off a little bit. Like Uranus is opposing your moon right now. So you're feeling a little restless. And I think it's more important to get the show on the road with work stuff. And then you can decide that you either want to move when you're going through the Mercury retrograde, or post-Mercury retrograde on your ascendant in like July. And then you'll have a Mercury and a Venus retrograde in your 4th house, which is going to be happening over the fall. So it's like working the next 2 months, wanting to take a break or wanting to kind of get away, you could do that in kind of June into July. Be mindful that at the end of June, there's going to be a Mercury retrograde. But I actually like that for Cancer risings if they want to take a break and they want to kind of like check out for a little bit and then focus more on like the change with the home and the living stuff. So you're not moving again, doing that closer to the fall, because that would be better timing for you. But Jupiter sitting on your ascendant, like it's bringing in health, it's bringing in organization, it's bringing in opportunities for you to like get employed. I would say make the most of these transits, because it looks like if you get the show on the road, you could really be working and making some decent money or feeling a little bit more independent financially as you're getting into like July, August, and September with some of like the eclipses that are going to be playing out in your financial houses. Okay. Yeah, go and learn about Saturn and Neptune transiting your 10th house, and go and learn about Saturn basically squaring all of your planets that you have in Capricorn. It's going to feel like a lot, because it's going to get up to about 15 degrees. So it's squaring Mars, which means you're going to have to figure out a schedule and work with, you know, your ex. It's going to square Venus, which means that it's going to push you to work harder, so that way you can have some changes both in your home, but I think also it's going to be about like a new direction with your career. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely report back and let me know what happens. All right, we've got Rosie and then Diana. What's up, Rosie? Let me pull your chart up here. I know I've got you. And that was, you were March 15th, right, Rosie? I've got a couple of Rosies, so I just got to make sure. What's up, T? YouTube sometimes erases it if it's there for like more than 24 hours, so I'll add you to the list, but can you remind me what your question was, so that way I have it? From New Jersey. All right, cool. All right, so let's take a look and see what's going on in Rosie's world. Career look ahead. All right, let's do it. So Cap rising, Sun in Pisces. You got your moon in Leo. Mercury is very much tied to your career, as is Venus. You got some skewed houses, so I would say actually probably more Venus. And Venus is receiving a conjunction from Mars recently. It's been trining Jupiter. You're finished with your Pluto square Pluto, so that's good. And if you're going to see any kind of changes in terms of work, I would say there's a couple things that come to mind. One is you're going to see in April, Uranus is going to go back into Gemini. Now, it's not technically in your 6th house yet, but you may feel the effects of it, especially right around the time that you're kind of getting into like late April, early May, right? Uranus going into Gemini for a lot of Cap risings is going to be like, oh, suddenly there's more freedom, or I'm taking a flexible position, or it's this, or it's that. It could also mean that there is more independence that's kind of coming through work, or you're doing some work potentially like remotely. And Venus will be going through there as well. So with Venus and Uranus meeting, I have a feeling like right around the end of April is when there could be a change. And this is going to square the north and the south node, okay? So we're going to see kind of like May into June, Uranus squaring the nodes as saying we have to make an upgrade, right? And so Uranus rules your 2nd house of money. So it might mean that you're like, okay, I'm feeling more incentivized to work, or, you know, maybe I'm willing to do different positions, or I'm kind of like versatile or kind of like flexible. And she says, when Uranus did something in July, that's right around when I started a new job. So that we saw, I think that was when it first ingressed, I think so. And then there was like a retrograde or something in the fall. So you're going to see when this transit hits, what's interesting is it's actually going to be coming into like a sextile slightly with Saturn and Neptune. So I'm wondering, is there like a work from home position? If there's like something that's going to be more, social communication based. I think a lot of my Capricorn and Capricorn risings are going to find that they're either trying to work or work out from home, or that there can be opportunities for work that's closer to home. And you're keeping an open mind, and you're able to be like more flexible in terms of the type of work that you could do. But I don't really necessarily see anything ending. It's just Uranus is now coming into a square with Venus, which means you're having to kind of upgrade where you're working, how you're working. And yeah, that can bring a little bit of tension, but I think it's just excitement because it's something different. And the North Node is actually coming in conjunction with Venus. See, forget even Uranus and Gemini. This transits every 19 years-ish, 18 and a half. So with that North Node Venus, exalted Venus, it's wanting you to actually bring in some kind of work that's going to be more pleasurable. It's going to be better paying. It's going to be something more creative. Like you're feeling a little bit more inspired. And I really, really, really like that, because that trine to your Pluto is telling me whatever change is coming, let's say from the end of April through the better part of, oh, I don't know, early July when Mars and Uranus is there, that could also bring some kind of sudden change. So I'd be more concerned about what's going on in early July with Mars and Uranus, because it could materialize as being like, oh, I was doing this and I don't like it, so now I'm doing that, you know? And you could be like a little flippant with some of the stuff. And that's picking up the energy of Saturn, which is in like the 4th house. So I don't know what you do for work, but I'll tell you that I would be if you can't find something full-time, I would be like, okay, am I willing to take 2 part-time positions? Or do I take like a side hustle or some kind of like, you know, shorter kind of gig or more flexible gig, so I have more time at home, right? Or something that allows you to work from home. If not, then you need to keep an eye on your health with Uranus transits in Gemini. A lot of my Capricorn and Capricorn risings may notice that there's more kind of stress because the nervous system is Uranus, and like Mercury and that connection to Gemini is just stress from changing schedules, not having consistency, kind of feeling like you're kind of all over the place. And she said, environmental manager. Okay, so what's cool is that, I mean, you could very well with Saturn in your 3rd house be getting something that's going to allow you to be much, much, much closer to home, but also something that's going to be more about working with your community. So I don't know where you're doing it. I don't know if it's going to be more like a city job or something that's connected to a company, or even something that's going to be like a federal employee. But there is a possibility that you could have the opportunity to be a little bit closer to home at a small medium factory. So with Mars and Uranus, the only thing you want to watch for is like inner office, like politics. Like there can be some tension that's going on in like early July. And if you're working in anything that's like environmental related, be very careful with Mars and Uranus, because there could be accidents at work. There could be people who are like cutting themselves, or they're kind of getting shocked, or, you know, there could potentially be like obviously fires and other things at work. So if there is stuff that goes on where there's like a problem and then they're having to shut something down, then it's going to activate Saturn being in your 4th house, and you're like, we had to like shut down for a week, you know, or like we had an issue and we had to like close something up. Obviously, I hope not, but Saturn in your 4th house is really, at least your whole sign is going to be trying to kind of bring you back down to home. And then there will be a bigger change that's going to happen later in the year. When Venus goes retrograde in your 10th house, that's going to be the big change. So that's going to be like early October, into November. And if you think back and you think about what happened in the fall of 2018, that was the last time that you had a Venus retrograde there. And yeah, I bet you dollars to donuts you had some kind of a job change. Something happened. So there could be a lot of like unpredictable changes with schedule or with employees or other things pretty much between now and July. But after that, it's going to stabilize. And then sometimes a Venus retrograde in the 10th house can bring you more recognition, or it can bring you back to working and collaborating with old employers or old managers, or it can give you an opportunity to kind of revamp something about the type of work that you're doing. Intuitively, I just feel like, man, Uranus being in your 5th house still, you know, sitting on your North Node, it's going to be like new hobbies, dating, creativity, self-expression, like things that are going to potentially be like interests and hobbies that you could consider doing that's not necessarily a job, right? I had a new boss in 2018 who was one of the best ever. See, that's the thing. Sometimes like people like to freak out about Venus retrogrades, and like, yeah, one in Scorpio is kind of nasty. But it will literally create some kind of change in dynamic to bring you more pleasure and more joy in that area. So yeah, I think that whatever ends up changing there is going to be probably for the best, especially with the trines that are going to be kind of happening to the North Node, and potentially kind of paving the way for you to probably get more recognition and possibly even like a higher status or position at work, depending on the relationships that you have with bosses. But expect some shakeups that's going to be happening with work, especially right around kind of like the end of April, and then you'll see it again around the beginning of July. Fall of 2018, I also got to see, there you go. I got to go and plan to visit a plant in Japan for the summer. See, like it will give you the opportunity to see positive changes in relationships, and it'll also give you the opportunity, I think, with like Venus square Pluto, and you know, Venus that's going to be in a square to let's see, it's going to square Pluto. It's not going to square Jupiter. Jupiter's going to sextile. It may bring you an opportunity to travel again or have some like, you know, training or certification. I could definitely see that. But there's like lots of opportunities for like increased benefits or better benefits or something of that nature, because it's all going to be kind of going through your 8th house, and Mars and Jupiter are going to be on your moon. So to me, that looks like there could be some really big money stuff going on, or something that deals with like a windfall, or even like a really intense romantic relationship, and your like relationship status is changing through the retrograde with Venus. But yeah, pretty much the big headlines are going to be what's happening at the end of April, and then you'll see that also again in early July. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thankfully, Uranus is coming out of an opposition with your Mars. I remember when I had that transit. That was not fun. All right, let's take a look. Who else do we have here? So we've got Diana and then T. All right, Diana, she's on her way back from Vegas to Los Angeles. Let me scroll back up here so I can pull up her info. Where is she? Let's see. Diana, can you just confirm your birth info for me? I just want to make sure I have the right Diana. I'm Sagittarius. I want to see which one. I have so many. I have a Diana V. I think that's you. January 10th, 85. When my Time Lord Jupiter went direct, I decided to take this trip to Vegas. January 10th. Okay. So let's take a look here. So when Jupiter went direct, you decided to travel. Okay. And you had all those planets in your 5th house, so you went to where the casinos were. Your Time Lord is basically, so your birthday starts over. It's like that's your new year, right? And it's going to highlight a house every year. So based off of her age, let's go to your perfections. She's in a Pisces Jupiter year. And this is based off whole sign. So this is just one version of predicting. She's got Pisces in her 6th house ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's natally in the 4th, and it was retrograde in Cancer. So she probably felt like she didn't have the time in her schedule to travel. And then it went direct, and she was like, okay, I'm making the jump. I'm going to go. And all these planets have been actually trining Jupiter. So it's been good since like the Mercury retrograde wrapped, Jupiter's direct. I mean, obviously traveling. And it's also been in a slight trine to your Venus and your Mars. So good for having fun, you know, going to bars, pools, casinos. That's all like 5th house stuff. And you're going to be in your Jupiter year all year. So if you notice with your natal Jupiter in the 4th house, sometimes it's not just about expanding the home. Sometimes it's getting out of the home and kind of traveling, because you can feel kind of bogged down, like being home and working all of the time. And you won big too. Good. Yeah. So I have noticed for some of my Libra risings, they have told me that. They've been like, oh my gosh, especially like the later degrees. They're like, oh, I won a scratcher, or I had somebody else tell me that they like won a bunch of there was like a lottery prize where like they went and did like a raffle, and they won like 4 different prizes. Like one of them was like an all expense paid like cruise vacation. And I was like, that's so Pisces. Anyway, so that's great. I think that probably, I don't know if what you're wondering about, but I would just say keep your wits about you, because some of the transits that are kind of coming up are going to be quite a lot for my Libra risings, right? So it really kind of starts with like the full moon in Libra. That's going to kick off here around the 1st. And if you notice, you've got Juno at 11 degrees. Well, the full moon's going to be conjunct your Juno. So that's wrapping up, completing anything that deals with like karmic, partnership, relationship themes. So whether this is like past life, marriage, karma, anything that's about calling in a soulmate or enhancing more kind of connection and togetherness with existing relationships, it will highlight that. And then it's going to be really also highlighting Venus, and Venus is technically going to be in your 7th. So it can be indicating that there's about to be some big changes in like relationship land. Venus will be experiencing a square to Pluto, so you might feel it around the time of the full moon. And if you look, right around the time the moon is coming into Scorpio and opposing Venus, it's going to square Pluto. So what I'm wondering is, it's like and this is kind of like the horoscope for Scorpio risings. I was talking about this on Sunday. I was like, well, Venus is going to go through your 7th house. So like partnerships are pushing you to kind of get out of the house, or you're going to meet somebody who's going to challenge your old ways of living and kind of like doing things. So it is indicating there's opportunity if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone to connect with other people. Although like this square is a little like nasty on the 3rd. So be mindful of that. And then we need to see something going on with Mars for relationship stuff to happen. So you meet people wherever your 7th house Lord is, and you have it in the 5th, whole sign 6th. So my advice would be this. Over the next month, especially when you see like Mars going into Aries and when the moon goes through Pisces, so like right around April 13th, 14th, that's a day that I would go somewhere where there is music, it's vibey, maybe it's by water or by a pool or by a lake, you go to the beach. The other option is by whole sign standards, like Venus and Mars are actually connected to your 6th. So if you're going to meditation classes, if you're going to flow workouts, if you are going to a gym, if you're doing anything that's like water oriented, especially I would say with Pisces in the 5th house, like going to a beach bar, or going to a bar or a restaurant or where there's like live music near water, those transits might trigger you meeting someone because the moon's going to hit your Mars. Mars is coming into your 7th house. And then boom, right after this, you're going to have a new moon in your 7th house where this is going to be about planting seeds for new relationships and healing any issues that you have with relationship vulnerability. Somebody may show up within that 6-month period between that new moon and the next full moon. And Venus is also coming into conjunction with your North Node. So I don't think that I would immediately jump into anything knowing that Mercury and Mars and Saturn are conjunct, but I would be saying go somewhere near the beach, be working out, going to new fitness studios, be trying to meet other people who are in the process of healing themselves or working on themselves, because that's going to open the door to relationship kind of connections. And you're still going to see eclipses that are going to be conjunct your Mars actually at the end of summer. So that'll also kind of trigger relationship stuff. So I would assume like the Pisces lunar eclipse in August, the full moon in Aries, that's going to be in September. Those are big relationship turning points. And you're also going to see when Mars is coming in conjunction with Chiron, this can be some like relationship boo-boos around May 12th, 13th, and 14th. That can get a little sticky. So watch for relational dilemmas there. But we need to see outer planets that are doing things with your natal Mars. And well, I mean, you've got Jupiter that's been trining it. You're going to have Saturn going into your 7th house with Mars. And so it can feel like there's like a little bit of like getting to know somebody new, but you can meet people with Chiron right on your descendant who are like, yeah, I'm like ex-military or like veteran. You can meet people who are older. You can meet people who are having like really bad allergies or like they're working through like some health issues. But you can also meet people who are like connected to like self-help and wellness and like healing, right? So usually when Chiron's going into the 7th house, if you're single, it's a little bit easier to navigate because you could meet somebody who comes in that's going to be like a therapeutic or like healing relationship. It doesn't have to be somebody who's like problematic. But for all my Libra risings, Saturn and Neptune are still in your 7th house. So people are going to look very good. They're going to be very charming and it can look good on the appearance, like on the outside. But you need to be careful because they can like wear masks with Neptune being there. So the more you get to know them, you could be like, ooh, like do they have a drinking problem? Like is there some mental health issues? Like what's going on here? So take your time getting to know people in April. But I definitely feel like you're in that time period where with that North Node hitting your Mars, you should naturally feel like you either want to be by the beach or by water or, you know, be kind of like vibing out because that's how you're going to meet somebody. Literally, it could be somebody who's like fishing, boating, swimming, kayaking, you know, somebody who's surfing, like that kind of stuff because you have Mars and Pisces. And you'll come together in one of those locations because it's in your 5th house. She says, I always run into military or former military, plus my father was a Marine. Yeah, it's because of Aries, right? It's because that's what Aries is. And you'll meet like older people now. Like Saturn being there, you'll either meet older people or people who are like a little bit more mature maybe than what you're kind of like used to dating. And I think with the South Node on your moon too, like you can be feeling like you're maybe a little burnt out of just like working all the time, or you're feeling a little kind of like burnt out of like certain female friends. And like South Node moon brings up like a lot of moodiness. So you're also kind of in that until the summertime. But if you're incorporating more of the Pisces water, healing, music, therapy, meditation, you'll meet somebody else who's going to have similar interests. So even if you're going and doing like fitness and like wellness things that are on the beach, by the beach, studios there. She says, I want to live by the beach. A lot of my Libra risings are going to move by beaches because Saturn and Neptune are in the 7th. So it does represent possibly going and moving somewhere because Saturn is your 4th house, or meeting someone will incentivize you to move. So my single Libra risings, I've been telling all of them to like hang out in like the beach cities, and then they'll meet someone. And then the dilemma, you know, at some point, either over the summer or potentially in the fall with some of the retrogrades, is like, okay, is it going to be your place or mine? Like, where are we going? You know? Yeah. I work a lot. You deserve this little vacation. Well, I'm glad to hear that you won big. I love that you went to Vegas when the North Node was conjunct your Venus. Were you wearing like all kinds of like glittery eyeshadow with Venus and Pisces? All of like the sheer tops and like all of like the pearlescent kind of like, you know, or like luminescent kind of like colors. I love that. It's very like dramatic and theatrical there. Probably lots of really great drunk photos, I would assume. Well, let me know like who shows up, especially for my late Virgo risings, you know, and Libra risings in general. It's all gonna be like it's gonna be like the end of March, the end of April, like the 3rd week to the end of April. I was laughing because I was like, oh, it's gonna be in my 7th house, and they say that the first 10 degrees of the 7th house is it's legal matters. And so I've been sitting around being like, what's it gonna be? Like, what's gonna be the legal dilemma? And then of course I got in the mail, I got a jury summons for April 20th. So like my ass is gonna be sober on 4/20. I am going to do my jury duty apparently. And it's the day that Saturn, Mercury, and Mars are all conjunct in my 7th house. And I was like, of course, Saturn, I'm being summoned to court. Like it could not be more like dead on. It's just ridiculous. She says, I work a lot, deserve this vacation. Oh my God, I was. My nails were pink and glitter because of my exalted Venus. Sue says she went away to Sedona, Arizona. Okay. Well, I mean, hey, if you can ride off into the sunset and have some peace from all that Saturn stuff, great. All right, well, let me know what happens. I want to know who shows up. So come back and leave comments on this video, okay? And I'm glad that you had a good time. I always wear shades for the degree of my Venus or the color. Hey, well, how do you figure that out? Send me that info. That I want to know. I have Venus in Capricorn. I feel like it would all just be like slate gray and like brown. Not my favorite colors. Mostly black. Dead animals. That's kind of like what I like. Leopard print. All right, so let's move on. We've got Be Well with T. I gotta scroll up and get her comment. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. Let's see. Oh man, what did I save your name under? There it is, Be Well. All right, so I'm here too. Put my question in yesterday. Thanks, I didn't know. I was hoping the North Node stuff on my ascendant would help me find my purpose. All right, let's get to where we are now. I'm planning to get that boat next week, but fear has held me back. I don't want to waste resources, but I need to level up in how I provide. Do you think that Taurus, Chiron, Uranus, Scorpio ruled year, my North Node in Leo has anything to do with my purpose, what it is? So transiting North Node is not so much purpose. Transiting North Node is going to be more about what you're leaning into and how there's growth and how there's development. Your purpose is both going to be a combination of, I would say, your chart ruler, which is Jupiter in the 7th. So, you know, helping kind of guide people, because Virgo can be about a guide and kind of helping people with healing or kind of the journey of relationships or connecting with nature. And then your North Node is actually in Leo, ruled by the sun, which is in the 6th house of your purpose is here for healing. Your purpose is here for serving. And your North Node's at a Scorpio degree, and you're going to see that, well, I mean, Jupiter's going to be going into that sign. So if there's ever a time, I would actually think the North Node hitting your ascendant is not so much about your purpose, okay? So if you thought that, you feel like you missed your window, you didn't miss your window, you were just opening up to things. See, the North Node makes things so much more, I think, especially in Pisces, harder and kind of to see and kind of cloudy and kind of convoluted. However, it's more about how we're opening up to emotions. So we're opening up to what our emotions are telling us. We're becoming more connected with the divine. We're feeling inspired. And in the first house, it's like, I have to listen to my body, right? And unfortunately, Saturn and Neptune has been there throughout that transit. So it's a lot of like confusion. Who am I versus South Node in Virgo? Who are other people? And you've been getting kind of slapped around since the South Node was actually in Libra. There's been a lot of like relationship clearing, coming back to self. So as the North Node is in Pisces, you have to remember it's just more about your body, and it's just more paying attention to your gut. And also like Pisces is still conclusions and like completions. So you've been figuring things out about yourself, clearing out certain phases, part of that awareness of you saying, yeah, I know I need to show up. I know I need to do something. You didn't miss your window. It's just the spirit's been getting ready for stuff while it's been in Pisces. So that way, when the South Node goes into Leo and the North Node goes into Aquarius, we can actually then start going after our goals. Does that make sense? So I do think that, you know, skills are very Virgo. And very sixth house. So for like a Pisces, just a Pisces rising in general, my forecast would be like, look, here's what's going to happen. You're going to see that Jupiter is going to go into your sixth house. And it's going to go into your sixth house starting around the end of July. And this is where suddenly you, because you're Jupiter, are getting into alignment with sixth house things. So services, health, timing, work, but things that feel fun, right, Leo? So as it comes into conjunction with Jupiter, there will be an abundance, Jupiter and Mercury, of clients, right, Virgo. And then you're going to see Jupiter sit on your North Node, which is going to be fabulous because Jupiter is then going to enhance your Sun, while the South Node is also hitting your Sun. So that means that you'll be going along doing your work and you're not really going to feel like you're working. You're going to feel like, I love what I'm doing. This is so fun. I get to play. I'm in the sun. This is great. And you're not going to feel like it's like you're just slaving away. And a lot of my Pisces risings are going to find that they're just making more time for daily joy, creativity. Also, it's going to be possibly about like doing things that are going to be more creative, right? And well, obviously it's going to not just sit on your North Node, it's going to hit your Sun. I mean, it's really good for getting your act together, especially if the Sun is the ruler of your North Node. And not only that, but it's going to trine Saturn. So you're going to feel like because you were kind of staying the line, you stayed committed. And this isn't about hitting it right when you get into July and August. I think you're in the Aries season now where you're going, okay, Saturn's kind of picking up the energy of my second house. Ooh, tightening the purse strings. I really don't want to waste money and I want to be more conservative. And that's smart. But Mars is coming into conjunction with Saturn. So it's telling you that you will spend money on things that are going to be valuable for you later in the year. And maybe this is also about building a little bit more confidence, right? Mercury is going to go there too. So a lot of this is you going, what's my budget? What can I spend? What am I going to be charging? What do I have to offer? The second house is great for figuring all that stuff out. Like I remember when Saturn went through my second house and I have Mars and Mercury there. So I know what it feels like. That was a time where I was starting my readings and I was like, I don't know what I would charge for readings. I have no idea because I was just giving away readings for free. And then it got to a point where I was like, I can't do both of these things. I have to make a living. So if I'm going to make a living, then I have to figure out what I'm worth. And then it was like a process of a year of me kind of being like, yeah, this is a lot of work and like it's kind of draining, and it's not something I have all the time for. So I'm going to charge for it. But in that process of figuring that out, it also taught me that, hey, I'm gonna have to work hard for what I'm doing, for what I'm making. It's not gonna be handed to me. So you can use some of the more malefic energies that are coming in. And like for everybody, I'm just gonna keep telling you, especially for the water signs are gonna get their ass kicked in April. Not in a bad way, okay? Not to scare you, but what it's gonna teach you is that nobody is going to hand it to you. If you wanna make something, you're gonna have to make it your way. And you're going to have to learn how to do with very little. So it's actually kind of starting businesses from scratch, Aries. And so what you'll find is that with Mars going into the second house, usually we want to spend more, we want to be a little bit more kind of crafty. We really want to just have more of everything. But Neptune being there is like, no, I need to check in with myself. Is this actually a good investment? Do I really value this? Do I need this? Here's a good way to use this energy. Start going through stuff. Right? I would be going through your things and I would be like, what can I get rid of? What do I not need? And that might mean you're cutting subscriptions, you're trimming the fat in your budget when it comes to what you're spending on food, what you're eating, what you're spending. You could be going through some of your personal belongings and being like, Marie Kondoing your life and being like, what do I have that I don't need if I need some extra cash? And you're going to be more entrepreneurial and be like, I'm going to sell stuff. You know, like I have a Pisces risings. I've had several Pisces risings that told me that they're using this transit to go on Facebook Marketplace and they're just picking up free stuff and they're cleaning it up or they're refinishing it and then they're selling it. You know, like furniture, clothes, shoes, bikes, things that they can fix that are basically free that people don't want to deal with, and they're just turning around and they're flipping it and they're just literally turning people's junk into treasure. That's a great use, I think, of that energy, but it's going to be different for everybody. I think having a little Leo in your chart is beneficial because it's going to start trining your sun and also your Mercury. So I would be thinking about what kind of services you can offer, how much time you can offer, what those prices look like, and getting prepared so that way right around the first half of June is rolling around before the Mercury retrograde, you can actually be like starting your business, because I want you to be thriving when those eclipses come in August, and they will trine your second house. So the more cautious and conservative, but also kind of hardworking you are, should likely pay off over the summer. So in a perfect world, you know, you're ready to go. You're launching this thing and you're doing it in early, you know, June. So yeah, you're going to have to probably go and get the boat. Uranus is also going into Gemini, and it's going to be like making some aspects in your chart. It's starting to come into a square with your ascendant, not quite yet, but it's also trining Pluto. So you can also get crafty and get kind of be more open-minded about how you get there, how you get the boat back. I wonder, like, does it make sense to see if there's other people who have trailers and other things that might be going from one city to the next that could help you with the process of like bringing it back? Or do you have a friend, do you have a neighbor, something like that that could help you actually move that and get it to you if you need to do that? And I would be really open to, you know, doing that, because you're gonna be very busy. When Mars and Uranus are kind of going through your third house, you're gonna be like running a bunch of errands and trips and things. So probably going and getting it and possessing something is very Mars and Saturn. So be conservative, but also think about ways that you can probably bring in a little bit of extra cash, so that way you can kind of soften the blow until you get like the business stuff up and rolling. And summer should be pretty great when you're having those eclipses and Jupiter on your North Node, which is really about expanding into your destiny. So you're not late, you're just early. Hopefully that's helpful for you, T. Thanks for being a member. All right, we've got Jasmine, Danielle, and Claudine. And Dana, I did not forget about you. I see you too. All right, let's pull up Jasmine. Let's see, pull up my PayPal. All right, Jasmine is 3/17/96 at 7:54 p.m. in Dallas. I know something big is about to happen in my life, but I don't know where. At the moment, there are multiple areas of my life that are evolving. It's like a slow burn crescendo, and I can't tell if the genre is horror or rom-com. That's hilarious. All right. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. Let's see something. So your Venus ruled chart, your birthday you just had, so happy belated. So now you're 30. So what you're feeling is the fact that you're 30 years old now and you're going through your annual perfection year 7. So it's funny because, you know, Pisces is like feelings, and it's where things are kind of like, we can feel it, but we can't quite grasp it, or we can't quite figure out the words or kind of put it together, but we know that something is concluding and something big is coming. And so, I mean, that's what's happening in the collective, right? Just from a general standpoint, all these planets and these retrogrades in Pisces, I keep telling everybody, I'm like, something big is coming. There's like some really big changes in the world, but we're not going to see it physically manifest until it's coming into Aries, right? It's rising. It's like kind of that change is now going to be embodied. So for a Libra rising chart, it's inverted because you have Libra in the first house, Aries in the 7th. So this is why I say, like, what I like about being a Libra rising is when the world zigs, you zag. You know, people can be going through stuff, and it's almost like Libra risings can actually thrive when things are kind of chaotic. And that's because they have that natural innate need to understand, you know, both houses, both signs. So really, believe it or not, a lot of the change that's about to happen is more going to be with other people. So 7th house could be people you're going to be in relationships with, people who you're going to be, you know, kind of partnering with. It could be things connected to friends, you know, anything like therapists. Even your 7th house is like astrologers. So other people are going to start kind of being like main characters in your life as all of these planets over the next month go through your 7th house. According to annual perfections, what it means is that there's going to be this prophecy that's going to be fulfilled that's connected to the ruler and the themes of your 7th house. Well, the 7th house isn't all like butterflies and rainbows. It's what we call open enemies, right? People who will stab you in the front, not in the back. So you do have to watch out for the 7th house because it'll be people who will literally like, you know, kind of confront you, get in your face. There could be some drama. But it could also potentially be a really big turning point for you in terms of relationships. And I can see that relationships have kind of been challenging. I guess I would say that. I mean, you've got South Node in Aries. So usually that means that there's like a past life of there being a lot of like independence and like not a lot of togetherness or like partnerships. It's kind of counterproductive when it's in your 7th house because it means that maybe you have had a lot of relationships with people who have had problems, right? The pretty common theme that I see with South Node in the 7th is just kind of like, yeah, you know what? I just meet people and they're selfish or they have a tendency to, you know, be too independent and like I get hurt, right? North Node Chiron on your ascendant. And so beyond that, we also see that your 7th house ruler, Mars, is landlocked next to Saturn and also your sun. So I'm wondering, like, have you had a tendency to have partners that have health problems? Have they had really bad addictions? Do they have mental health issues? Have they been their own worst enemy, right? Because this is 12th house to the 7th. So it tells me that you attract very kind of Piscean, Neptunian people that hide stuff. They kind of play the martyr. They act like the victim, like that kind of stuff. And I'm not bad mouthing them. It's just that's your karma. And so you've been playing that out through your Saturn's return until you get to a point where you're like, these motherfuckers are making me sick, you know, or they're making me crazy. And like getting to a point where you're like, I can't fix everybody. You know, I have to like look out for myself. And that's what you've been in hardcore for the last year between Saturn and Neptune. So the Mercury retrograde is concluding. It's pretty much done. We're going to see it come out of the shadow here pretty soon. And all of these planets are now going into your 7th house. And so one thing, and I'm not just saying this, I've seen this in my life. I've seen this in the life of a lot of other Libra risings in this last year. 7th house Saturn is karma, right? So the karma of other people now having to own up to their actions. So a lot of Libras and Libra risings, hold on, my computer's going to die. Sorry, guys. Are going to find that you're going to probably hear that people who you have dealt with, who have given you some problems in the past, be that legal issues, you know, people that you dated, you know, issues that you had with friends, whatever, like they're getting their dose of Saturn now. And you will have people who will come back to you and be like, I screwed up. I'm sorry. You know, take me back. I've realized the error of my ways, blah, 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 blah. And the catch here is that it's going to sit on your South Node, which means that it's going to be because maybe they've gone to therapy or, you know, they're working through things or other relationships didn't work. And, you know, they come back around and they're like, hey, you know, can we talk? And Saturn and Mercury and Mars are nasty in this chart around mid-April. So when you say like it's either going to be a rom-com or it's going to be a horror movie, I'm hoping it's a rom-com 100% because I don't want to like be like a doomsday astrologer. Like there is a possibility that somebody can come in that, you know, you never got closure with and they apologize and like there is a clearing because it happens on your South Node. That's very possible. But Mercury rules hidden enemies and people who you have a dream about and you run into or somebody you're thinking about. And it can also represent where, you know, people are revealing something about themselves and their true colors. And then Mars is going to be their actions. And then Neptune is going to be where they want you to feel sorry for them. Like you may have somebody come back to you that's just like, oh, well, I hope you're happy. Like I got what I deserve, like blah, 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 blah. And I would be like, be very careful with Saturn because Saturn is like the karmic, you know, like he will karmically punish people. When people are going through their shit, I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's what you deserve. I would be like, I'm really sorry you're going through that. You know, I wish you well and I wish you far away. Because whatever is going on with other people, you can get sucked into, unfortunately. And it can represent a time where you're really finally realizing, I am now kind of graduating from some of the old relationship habits, and like now I'm ready to move into something new. But you'll get tested, and even Libra risings that are in relationships, they're gonna get tested. They're gonna see some stuff where either other people are going to be sharing things about themselves that they want you to know to try to see if you can rekindle. And by the same token, you know, the 7th house is like a mirror. So what Libra risings don't want to hear, but I think we need to hear, is that like that's our shadow side. So Aries is where we are combative and we can be a little of a reactionary and we can be a little like intense, and you can get feedback from people too. So you can also hear from a partner or somebody you're dating, like, I don't think you're aware that you're doing this, or like you're projecting on me, or, you know, a partner can give you some insight or something that's like your blind spot. So it's also about not taking it personally, right? And yeah, it's going to get interesting. Like whatever is going to happen, once again, you know, whatever is going to happen here is very, very, very personal, because you're going to see that it's all going to be on top of your south node within a 10 degree conjunction, and it's going to oppose your Chiron. So it's basically, let's say like the 15th of April, through around about like the beginning of May. And like I said, wish them well and wish them far away, because when Saturn comes into this house, now you're ready for something that's going to be more stable, right? So would it be? Yes. I feel like all Libra risers have attracted takers from a time or two. Yeah, but especially if you have all those planets in Pisces in your 6th house. That's like extra, 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 right? So I think that for the most part, it doesn't have to be negative, because there are some positive things that are happening here. You're going to see that this is sextiling Uranus, so it's helping you like release emotionally, especially like a lot of like family karma. It's also trining your Pluto, so it's about like empowerment and self-empowerment. And Saturn's going to get all the way up on your 7th house cusp here, and then it's going to start to retrograde back. So it's probably going to be the most intense like April until about August, and then it's going to chill out. Now, the other thing to think about is like your time lord, right, is Mars. So when you have like the new moon in Aries at the end of the month, set intentions for new relationships and healing relationship wounds. And then you're going to want to watch where Mars is going. So Mars is going to go through here. It's going to get crazy in April. Mars will meet with Uranus in early July. So traveling, education, anything that deals with learning or short distance trips, you might meet somebody there. Mars is also going to meet with Jupiter later in the summer, which is good also for like socializing and meeting new people and like joining new groups and communities. And that can be good for relationships. And that's going to start to kind of peak up right here in November. The only issue is that I could see for Libra risings, they're going to have situations where they're going to have like ex-lovers come back to them and be like, can we be friends? And then you're going to be kind of like, And then you're going to have situations where you could have friends that could become more than friends, where you're like, whoa, is there something here romantically? And then the 11th house is also the people that other people date, you know? So it's like, it can get a little sticky, but Mars trining Saturn, I think, is good. And for the most part, you know, think back to when you were 18. That's what I would do. Think about what happened the year that you turned 18. Because there should have been some big dramatic change that happened in terms of like relationships. And it'll always be 18, 30, and 42 that there's some pretty dramatic change there. So it's not bad, but yeah, I think a lot of Libra risings are gonna have like some real awakenings that if they really wanna be in relationships, that it's gonna require them to not just be people pleasers, right? And you're gonna ruffle some feathers. You're also gonna see that it's about you doing relationships differently and in a new way. And then that gets kind of reevaluated again in the fall when like Venus is retrograding in opposition to Saturn, and that's going to represent more self-focus kind of in the fall. But yeah, all relationships are going to get tested. And if there's ever a time to be like, I'm going to book a session with an astrologer and talk to them, it would be while you're going through these transits. So part of it could be this conversation. But if you're like, I need to talk to a therapist, I want to work with a coach, you know, I want somebody who's going to like hold me accountable. That's also great for the Aries energy. So I've told a lot of Libra risings, go and work with a dating coach, you know, go and work with a trainer, go and work with somebody who's going to be meeting with you and connecting with you. And some of these things will happen naturally. Like I've noticed that because I go to like classes where I have like one instructor and there's like 4 other people there in the class. And for whatever reason, the days that the moon's going through Libra or in Aries, as Saturn and Neptune have been in Aries, I show up and nobody else comes into the class. So I'm getting one-on-one with that person. And I'm like, all right, you know, so I'm like seeing it. So I realize that it's trying to get me to work more one-on-one with somebody. So think about something you're wanting to work on, right? In any way, shape, or form, because having somebody who holds you accountable, especially if you feel like you need help in the relationship department, can be a good idea and a good way to actually use the astrology to your benefit. Mars and Saturn don't have to be the bad guys. They're only going to be the bad guys if you like let other people kind of like get a rise out of you. All right, Jasmine. Well, good luck. Let me know what happens. I've got Danielle and then Claudine. What's up, Danielle? All right, so Danielle's the Cancer rising, all that Taurus, Aries moon. Whoa, Saturn and Neptune are sitting on your moon. They're opposing your Saturn and your Jupiter. All right, let's go to your question here. Hi, Candace, Danielle. I thought 2024 was hard, but this year has knocked me down. I remember telling you last year, I was like, when Saturn and Neptune hit your moon, that's going to be a lot. So it's knocked you down. My youngest daughter, Aries sun, is having health and anxiety issues. My dad had a cancer scare. Will this ease up? All right. So first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know your daughter's astrology, but Venus is your kid and your natal Venus is in Taurus. It's conjunct Chiron. Maybe this is the eclipses that are coming into, well, it's kind of a wide square, but I guess it was technically kind of like 10 or 11 degrees squaring your Venus. So that could have triggered something. And you've got a lot going on. So let me try to kind of spell it out. So first things first is this. Your chart ruler, because you're a Cancer rising, is the moon. And it doesn't matter what your rising sign is or even your sun sign. If you're an Aries moon, like you have a really good game face, right? Like there can be a sense of being like, I can do anything, get out of my way, I've got it, I can take care of it, you know, like I'm on top of the world. And part of what's going on is when you have had Saturn and Neptune just recently come into conjunction with your moon, the 10th house, I believe, really has a lot to do with father figures. I feel like the 4th house is more kind of like mom or home. You had Saturn come into conjunction with your moon, okay? So that means that there has been this kind of heavy emotional burden revolving around parents or parenting. So both this concern for, oh, I need to be there for my dad because Saturn represents your relationship with like a father figure and like the emotional challenges and kind of having to keep a brave face even though like you're scared. And then on top of that, Neptune is there too. And so with Neptune sitting there, it also brings kind of like on one hand, this opening up to being more emotional and more vulnerable. Like I'm talking to a lot of Aries moons and I'm taking notes because I'm an Aries moon too. And yeah, they're just kind of like, I just sit and cry and watch commercials, you know, or I'm just like so sensitive and I feel very vulnerable. And like there's things coming up that I've never really like felt before. And it can feel overwhelming, but Saturn being there is actually saying that it's helping you learn from some of these difficult experiences, right? Saturn Neptune is notorious for, you know, the deeper, kind of darker, heavier times in our life and like periods where we feel like it's just, you know, immense grief, or sometimes we feel lost, or we feel kind of hopeless. But it's a fire sign. So it's saying that it's really trying to kind of like shock you and like wake you up. And so part of this, I think, is easing up because now Saturn's moving away from your moon. So you're actually going to see Saturn retrograde later in the year, but it's not going to be conjunct your moon any longer. So you're done with that. That's finished. Neptune's going to hang out there for the next year. And Neptune is dealing more with, well, what direction am I going in with my career? What is my purpose? How do I feel? You know, do I feel vulnerable? Am I capable? And you can feel very emotionally overwhelmed when it comes to like working, when stuff's going on with your dad. Neptune can also be illness. So Saturn and Neptune hitting your moon is kind of like you going, okay, it's my responsibility to jump in and like take care of dad if he's dealing with health problems. Now, there's other things going on, right? If you notice, you've got Jupiter and also Saturn that are at the bottom of your chart. And I just suspect that, you know, with Saturn in opposition to Saturn, where you've been, you know, very much consumed with my emotions, my kids, my relationship, you know, my home, now it's kind of sending you for a tailspin because now you're like, well, I got to be worried about my parents. I got to be taking care of my dad. You know, I got to be there to support my mom. I got to be also working on top of that. So the opposition makes everything feel kind of like bigger. And It's also opposing your natal Saturn. So this is your Saturn opposition, basically. So it's not allowing you to stay at home, be super focused on being comfy or what's going on, even like with your mom or even your relationships. It's like work, dad, and me being a parent. And it does feel overwhelming, but it's going to subside. And it does have some support here. Like you're not stranded on a desert island. It's sextiling Pluto. Granted, Pluto's on your south node, so you're now recognizing and realizing that like life is short, things can turn on a dime. It does bring up a lot of like emotional vulnerability and kind of like, oh my gosh, like what if I were to lose a parent, you know, and things we don't want to think about, but stuff that does come up when you're going through a Pluto South Node transit about letting go of control of the future. And Aries is saying, be here right now. Don't worry about the future. The future is not defined. What can you do right now in this moment? So it's really like a new level of maturity for you. And maybe you feel like also simultaneously being a mom, being a parent, or doing some of these things like on your own is also like more of a job. But with Saturn, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And with Saturn saying that you can step up, be brave, be there to support, and be able to help, that sextile to Pluto kind of eases some of the fear of the future because you're being more focused on the present. So, you know, sometimes people have a family member that has a cancer diagnosis and they get weird and they're like, I don't want to watch my parent or my partner or my friend die. I can't be around that. I can't see it. And I would look at this and I would say, I don't think you'll do that. And I don't necessarily think that's going to happen either. But I don't think you'll do that. I think it's about you being like, okay, you know, I'm going to make sure that, you know, dad's taking care of his health. He's being physically active. You know, my mom has support, yada, yada. And that sextile to Pluto is going to be really beneficial. And I think it's just going to teach you that, you know, it's okay to be open to change. It's also trining your North Node. So it's about feeling solid, reliable. I mean, you were going to be busy one way or another, whether it was parenting duties, dealing with your parents, or working. You were just going to kind of get it all over the place. Certainly down the road, I'd be more focused on what's going on with what's taking place with family in the fall, like in October, November, when you have some retrogrades here. And also the health of parents, particularly your father, is going to be more tied to your third house. So when Jupiter goes into like Leo over the summer and there's eclipses, that's when you want to be paying attention to what's going on with your dad's health. Your kid is going to be more, I think, what's connected to both a combination of Venus, but it can also be Mars because that's your whole sign, fifth house. And it looks like Pluto is squaring your Mars, and then you've got Chiron coming up on your Mars. So if your fifth house is your child, this is their relationships with other people. So it almost looks to me like 1, 2, 3, 4 emotional changes and transformations, you know, feeling of anxiousness and, you know, so on and so forth. And it's impacting how she relates to other people. So it's actually Pluto that's squaring your Mars that's bringing up issues with your daughter. There is a possibility, and I'm just going off of your chart, but there is a possibility depending on how she's doing in the fall, you know, as you're getting into like September, October, November, when you have retrogrades in the fifth house, if she's not doing well, especially psychologically, right? If she's really struggling with, you know, mental health, or if there's more anxiety or stress, that's a time where you're like, okay, do I need to be more kind of attentive to what's going on, like with my daughter? Really, it's a lot of focus on dad until April. You get a little bit of a brief reprieve in June when there's a retrograde in your 12th house. And I would say like do something, take some time off, like get some kind of like alone time, and then be keeping more of an eye on what's going on with like your kid. Especially in the fall. And there could be some changes happening with the lives of your family, but I think you're going to be reconnecting and like reassessing what's going on with your daughter, and also possibly trying to figure out how you can factor in like dating time and social time into all of that, which you're probably going to be in the full swing of. But yeah, go and learn about your Saturn opposition. Go and learn also about, you know, Neptune conjunct your moon. And the Saturn opposition is wild because especially if you have an exalted Saturn, so it's a good placement, but when you have Saturn retrograde, and then you also have Saturn in opposition to your moon, you have this kind of signature in your chart where you're like, you know, somebody is always at a distance, whether it's a relationship at a distance, or if there's like a family member at a distance, or that there's something about changing homes or changing responsibilities that's coming up. You know, Saturn does rule relationships, so it also makes you realize like, oh my God, it'd be so great to have somebody who can kind of like help me, you know, carry the load right now. And then there's this relationship yearning. And so you'll become so busy with work, family responsibilities, you know, kid responsibilities, that suddenly now dating is like, it's not that it's not a priority, but somebody has to fit into your life, into your schedule. Like, you're not going to make sacrifices and other things for other people. If people are going to come in, they're going to have to understand that you've got a lot going on and they have to be supportive. That's also part of Saturn coming into conjunction with your moon. Infrared lights, sunshine, saunas, you know, wearing bright colors, you know, warm liquids, turmeric, ginger, all of those things is going to help keep that kind of depressive energy of Saturn away from your moon, right? And Saturn and Neptune are there. So I would be using those things, and like watch for anything with like headaches, migraines, digestional issues. A lot of that can be trapped emotions that you're not kind of dealing with and processing. So if you're not doing your ugly cries, then, you know, you're going to make yourself sick. So it's okay to like have a pillow that you can kind of scream or kind of cry into, or both if you're an Aries moon. Hopefully that's helpful, Danielle. Lots of stuff, man. I couldn't imagine Pluto on my South Node and Saturn and Neptune on the moon. I mean, it's just an intense period of just a lot of pressure, but it is going to start to subside. All right, we have got, who's next? Claudine, Maritza, Paloma. All right, let's see what Claudine has to say. Looking for a new job. Okay. What's up, Dr. Bombay? Welcome. All right, so she's looking for a job. Is this like the Libra rising support group? Are you guys okay? I know it's Saturn and Neptune in your 7th. Looking for a job. Okay, let's talk about it. Basically, as you know, we kind of like a reading. This is what we want to really focus on. My question is about work and career. I don't trust my manager anymore, and I've been looking since May of 2025. Okay. So your Cancer 10th house is your career. This is ruled by the moon, which is down here. And we got to see something positive with an outer planet making an aspect to your 10th house or your moon. Now, I can see that when it comes to communication with bosses and superiors, you already have your 12th house lord in the 10th. So there's already a sense of feeling like you can't communicate well with bosses, or you feel kind of undermined by bosses, or you feel like there's some issues kind of navigating, communicating. And for the most part, you try to, you know, kind of listen to your gut as to who or what you can trust, because it sextiles your 12th. But your natal Saturn, which you're coming into your second Saturn's return, so I just want to put a pin in this really quick. Go back to what happened in like 1995 to like 1998, okay? Maybe even 96 to 98. That period was when you were like turning 30, right? 29, 30. And that was your Saturn return. And so welcome back. This time around, it's like your victory lap. So it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be, yeah, I oftentimes hear that, oh, it was terrible. Well, your Saturn's pretty aspected, that's why. But there's some positives here. I think that if you have Saturn in the 7th house, it's about confronting and dealing with issues with authority figures. Bosses, older individuals, partners, relationships, and it squares your Mercury. So you already kind of have like a little bit of like an issue with authority figures. And you're kind of like this boss energy because you've got Mercury and the Sun at 29 degrees in the 10th house. So I kind of feel like other people are kind of intimidated by you. Not in a bad way, but like, it's been my experience with Saturn and Aries. Maybe it's just me, but I'm just like, there are some people that are just like so insecure, and they'll just like pick fights, and they'll say things or they'll do things just because like they feel very insecure. And so for you, I feel like it can now be getting to a point where you're going to be like, all right, like, what's the problem? And it's at a 12, so a lot of it's passive aggressive. It's not anything that she's saying you can feel it, but she does it probably in a way where it's not as obvious to other people, right? Does that make sense? I'm sorry to hear that you went through that. But yeah, I mean, the moon is going to be more your bosses. So the moon's in the 5th house. So this tells me that, you know, part of what's going on is Pluto's coming up on your moon, and that'll be like a several year period. It's not there yet. It'll be there in a couple of years. We're definitely going to be like, I want to do my own thing. It needs to be more creative. It needs to be more fulfilling. Or you're going to have other hobbies and things that are going to kind of start taking up some of your space here. But overall, if we look at the bigger picture is, at least for like a Libra rising chart, especially if you have Aquarius in your chart, the next 2 years is about having fun. The next 2 years is about doing things that's more creative, more inspiring, more social. And you're also going to see that now you're out of this Mercury retrograde that you've had for the last couple of weeks at work, where there's a lot of misunderstandings and issues with scheduling things. That retrograde's been trining Jupiter in your sun. So now we move forward. Jupiter's direct, great. Maybe Jupiter conjunct your Mercury has been exposing some of the issues at work. But there seems to be some changes that are coming up here. And this is kind of like the highlight of the year. When Venus goes through your 10th house, it's got to come out of the square with Saturn. So let's say from the end of May, really all the way up until around your birthday, and then boom, Jupiter's going to sit on your sun. So if you're one of the Libra risings who realized over the last couple weeks, either something's not working with someone who I'm working with, or, you know, I don't want to work here, I would be like, great, get the show on the road. Because you could be looking at potentially trying to meet and connect with another person while all these planets are going through your 7th house. It's either that or you're going to confront them. It's one of the two things. I would say, you know, with Pluto that's not on top of your moon yet, you could. But I would also probably wait this out, because when Mercury turns retrograde in your 10th, which is going to be the end of June, like somebody might out themselves. Like there's going to be something here where it's like anybody who's been trying to cause problems, they might be seeing their way out the door, or potentially there's going to be, you know, upper management or other people who are going to be like, what's going on? What's the problem? And it's going to square Saturn. So once again, to all my Libra risings, whatever you're putting off dealing with in April, where you don't want to deal with something directly, it's going to come back to kind of bite you in the ass, whether it's work-wise or it's with a client. Something's going to come up because this Mercury retrograde is going to square Saturn. So you can wait, but this is going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with. And I think that there's a way with like Mars and Saturn, at least for me, you know, and I have Mars-Saturn aspects, so I like to kind of just be like, is there a problem? Like, you don't have to like fight with somebody, you know, just be like, is there something you want to talk about? And like give somebody the opportunity to be like, yeah, there is. Or most of the time, because they're going to be kind of like freaked out, they're going to be like, no, there's no problem. You know, just letting them know that you're aware of like the passive aggressiveness. Others have heard her behavior towards me. Well, I mean, other people are more likely to stick up for you when you're starting to see that there's aspects with the sun. So it's possible that, you know, Saturn, Mercury, and the sun could be coworkers or problem. That would be closer to over here. So it would be like right around mid-April. Watch your P's and Q's though with Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. Like somebody, because once again, Virgo, it's connected to the South Node in Virgo. So where there's problems with like other people work-wise, and then like now it's being brought to your attention where other people might stand up or kind of go to bat for you. But this looks like a frustrating period, kind of like mid-April until the beginning of May. And then you see Saturn come into square with Mercury. It's almost like if these things are not confronted and they're not dealt with, they're going to come up and it's going to be a bigger problem. And you may have a situation where like a superior manager or somebody is saying to you like, yeah, why didn't you say anything, you know? But if you're looking for a new job and if you want out, then the time to do this is to start looking in April when all those planets are going through the 7th house. So I don't know what you do, but you know, your 10th house Lord is in the 5th. So usually this is somebody who does something creative, or they do something that's going to be more independent, or maybe they do something where there is a little bit of like flair, personality that's kind of added into it, which seems you're probably not going to agree with me on that because you have the Sun and Mercury in the 10th house where you're like, actually I work in, you know, yeah, there you go, finance, all right, something that's going to be traditional. And Mars in Scorpio is good for finance for sure, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, why are you not trying to do something for yourself? You know, you've got your 10th house ruler in the 5th. I mean, that could be that you could take a chance and try to do consulting. You've got your sun that's going to have a Jupiter conjunction. Why would you not go and try to work for a bigger company or a bigger position? You could. I would be watching for getting some kind of recognition or praise that'll probably happen either when Venus conjuncts your Jupiter in late June, or Mercury and the Sun conjunct your Sun, Jupiter and Mercury, excuse me. I would basically say April through about July is when I would be looking for a job. And the Mercury retrograde could get you out of one position and get you into something else if that's something that you want to do. And Pluto's just going to come creeping up on your moon, so it's going to make it a little tricky over the next couple of years for you to feel like you like what you're doing for a living. And Pluto's been squaring your Mars too, so you're like, yeah, I'm not really enjoying it, but you know, I need to make money. And Pluto's squaring your North and your South Node. Ouch. No, don't say that. Whenever we say that we're afraid of Pluto, or like when we get into like the trappings of like what Pluto could bring, he will serve that to you on a silver platter. So we don't ever say we're afraid of Pluto. We don't give our power over to Pluto. Pluto is actually here to transform something. It's to transmute pain. So, you know, with Pluto being in a square to your Mars, I have the same Mars in Scorpio as you. It makes me like ready to fight. I don't know. I've just been kind of just like, I'm just waiting for somebody to like try me, you know? But I also realize that that's Pluto going in the 5th house. That's just kind of like, you know, it needs an outlet. So I would encourage you, even if you're not changing jobs or whatever, with Pluto going in the 5th house, find something that you're like obsessed with. And Pluto in Aquarius in the 5th is like, you're obsessed with astrology or tarot, or you know, there's new kind of digital design and creative projects you could do, or it could be that there is some kind of community, you know, based hobby, or something that's going to involve something futuristic or something like that, right? That's totally me, but I don't regret my words. Yeah, I feel that. Well, that's the Mercury in Cancer. I'm Mercury in Scorpio, so I'm kind of like, eh. But you have Mercury square Saturn, so that's the other thing, is that, and that's a good thing. You know, you have superior square there, so you recognize your position. You want people to respect you. You don't want to be seen as somebody who's unprofessional. I get that. But now what's happening is like people are pushing you, right? Now that your Saturn return's coming up, people are pushing you. Go and think about what happened when you were in your late 20s. Something happened around that time where, you know, somebody didn't show up for you, right? They didn't support you the way that you needed. It could have been a partner, it could have been somebody at work, could have been a friend. And looking back, you probably will think to yourself, I should have given that person a piece of my mind, or I should have told them that, you know, they should have been, you know, better with communicating, or they should have been there for me. And I really feel like it will get to a point with work where it will almost be impossible not to say something as you're getting into like July and August. So knowing that that's coming, you know, if you have an opportunity to confront it and squash it, I mean, yeah, do it in the 7th house if you need to do it, right? But work-wise, you can see a change happen June into July, and then you're going to have another eclipse that's going to be in Pisces in August, which I think would probably be the best time. You might be negotiating, taking another position, or moving into a different area in your company or something right around that time, and then you're going to work with a new group of people. So, well, yeah, it's because your Saturn and your Mercury are at a 12. So when you say like, oh, what's going on here? Like 12 is Pisces energy. It's like, no problem. Even though you can tell, like there is definitely like... There's definitely something that's going on there. And it will probably come up with other people who might be like, hey, I'm noticing that you're doing this with me too. And like I said, other people might kind of stick up for you. But at some point down the road, your job's going to change, girl. You're going to see it change, because you're going to start having eclipses that are going to be close to your moon. So you'll start seeing this, and this is more kind of like pretty prominent changes. It'll be, you're going to have a eclipse there. It's not that one. You're going to have one there. It's not that one. It might be that one. And then when you're getting into early 2028, when you're having South Node eclipses in your 10th house, that's when you're going to see some definitive changes with your career, for sure. And then Mercury and Mars are sitting on your moon. So the more money stuff Libra risings are figuring out, you know, definitely when you're seeing like the Venus and the Mercury retrograde later this year, there's a complete reassessment of like what you value, which is very similar to the fall of 2018. And I think about that year, you know, just as like a fellow Libra rising, I would say Venus rules your chart, right? So if it's going retrograde in your money house, right over your Mars, it's going to be, well, what relationships do I value? How do I want to spend money? You know, how can I be more conservative? How can I save? And it's definitely going to be about preparing over the summer if there is some kind of change that happens with your financial situation, and maybe having like a little bit of a rainy day fund would be a good idea, so you don't feel like some of the pressure of what's going on financially around that time, and not making any crazy swing decisions, investments, you know, big purchases October and November. Try to do that after mid-November, and no big like cosmetic changes either. But Jupiter's about to hit your sun. So to me, I feel like you're going to have the support of your peers, and you have lots of opportunity to kind of grow in your career. And there can be new bosses and like leaders that can come in from that too. All right, we've got Maritza, Paloma, Lisa. So let's see, Maritza, you're welcome. What's up, Maritza? August 25th, 84. Hi. I had a breast lift with implants on 10/24. Did you mean 25? 10/24/26. I'm going to assume you say 10/24/2025. 24. Okay. So you had implants around October 24th. One of them never dropped. Now I need revision. I would like a good surgery date in April to work with. A good surgery date in April to work with. Recovery is important. The last one was rough. I'm anemic. Well, I mean, I'm not saying this to shame you, but like this is a good example of like why you pick decent astrology for when you go and you get surgery done. I have another client that's like literally late degrees Aries rising, same birth. I mean, you guys are born within like a day or two of each other, and they're going through the same things, a lot of surgical revisions. The reason why you're doing this is because last year when Mars, your chart ruler, met with Mercury, your health ruler, Mercury was in shadow, so it was getting ready to retrograde. So it was highlighting that you were potentially going to get a surgery that you would there in turn end up needing to be revised. And even though you would think Mercury in Scorpio, you know, Mars in Scorpio is like precision, Mercury's connected to the South Node and it was right on your Venus. So there was going to be some issues in regards to like the aesthetic sides of things. The moon deals more with like the stomach and the breasts specifically, or Cancer. And so it was trining Jupiter, but it was squaring your moon. So this is one of those situations where if you didn't hear my spiel, you know, if you're like, it has to be, you know, in April, I would be like, not necessarily the best month. Are you saying that it needs to be in April for health reasons? I mean, obviously, you know, from a cosmetic standpoint, I get you. You know, you just paid to get this revision or to get this this cosmetic surgery done. I know you want it to like look good, but this is really important to kind of think about because, well, this was also when the moon was waxing and then the sun was squaring Pluto. Man, I would assume you had a difficult time healing, right? Because I think Mercury went retrograde right over your Mars, so you should have had some little bit of challenges there around mid-November. And then when Mercury went retrograde conjunct Venus, you were probably not really happy with it around Thanksgiving. Not necessarily in April. Okay, that helps. All right, here's the deal. The worst healing. Yeah, it's because of the time that you did it. So here's the thing. Look, Chiron's going to sit on your ascendant for the next year. Okay, so something I would think about is, especially as we're getting into like the new moon in Aries, there's going to be a new moon that's going to be sitting pretty much conjunct your ascendant, which is about healing the body. And like all surgeries and all that stuff aside, I would be super focused on healing the body and ridding yourself of inflammation, because you can be having some pretty gnarly inflammatory things that are kind of going on. And that may be hanging around for a little while because Chiron's going to go into Taurus, it's going to retrograde back. Now, surgery is going to be tricky because you've got Scorpio intercepted in your 8th house, and you have got Mars, which rules your body, in conjunction to the South Node, and it's at 4 degrees, which deals with the breasts. And so with Mars in opposition to Chiron, it was also indicating like you have to be very careful. Like, I don't know if you noticed that you had any issues like around your armpits, or if there was like any issues with swelling or like mobility with your arms, like if there was any like nerve related issues or anything like that happened, because you have to be very, very, very careful this year. Chiron on your ascendant, that's 1. Uranus in opposition to your Mars, which is intercepted, that's 2. And then we're also going to be seeing that the South Node is sitting in conjunction to your Mercury. Like, this is just like the perfect storm of health related issues. And I have another client going through this, and he's had like 8 surgeries in the last year, like all reconstructive things, you know, with his mouth and stuff. So unfortunately, it's a healing transit, and what it's trying to get you to do is not feel like you need to change too much about yourself. I'm super pro cosmetic surgery. If something makes you feel better, great. But the Chiron transit, the Uranus-Mars transit, is kind of like you going like, oh my gosh, you know, like, do I want to spend all this time and money on doing something like this again? So getting the inflammation under control, super important. All right, so we need to see Mars that's going to be in good aspect, which is, it's going to be very few and far between that we're going to see those transits this year. I would say I could definitely recommend when Mars is trining Mars, that's a very small doable window that you could do this. I was shooting for April because my OB wants to remove a uterine polyp as well and was trying to get the breast issue resolved, wondering if I need to wait until after OB surgery. You're gonna have to pull up a calendar for me because I don't have one in front of me. But on April 15th, you're gonna have a waning moon, so it's gonna be better for healing. You're gonna have the moon conjunct Mars, which is about dealing with surgery and breasts. It is going to be trining your natal Mars, which is your chart ruler, and it's going to be sextiling Chiron. So even if you don't use this for anything breast augmentation related, maybe you can use this for going and doing your, OB related things connecting to your reproductive organs, right? This is still a decent day to do that. That should be okay because there's going to be some decent aspects in the sky. They are going to be very few and far between after this point. So I would give this the 15th, the 16th. I would focus on the new moon to be setting new intentions for health and healing. Then we got to wait until we're starting to see maybe Mars separating from Saturn. And then we're going to see the moon start coming into a trine with your natal moon. So you're going to have another round of this when the moon goes through there. And it's trining Neptune, which is good for anesthesia and healing. It's trining your natal moon. The south node is now off of your Mercury. So May 13th is another option. Uranus isn't opposing your Mars yet, so that's good. And then we're not looking at having another opportunity until Mars. I don't really like Mars in Taurus because it's going to be a little sextile Jupiter, so that's maybe doable. I guess we could do that. Uranus is still kind of opposing your Mars. That's a full moon. We can have the moon going through Pisces, which is going to square Mars. You have Mars opposed Mars. We can't do that. Venus in Virgo, which is good for Virgos, but it's going to hit the south node. We can't do that. Mercury's retrograde. I mean, it's just like, oh my God, it's a nightmare this year. We could do something like Mars. Let's see, Saturn's retrograde. Mars and the moon, sextile your natal moon, trining Pluto. Uranus is no longer opposing Mars. The sun is trining Saturn. Here's another one. The August 8th. Not necessarily April. Okay, so yes, anytime the issues of inflammation. I was shooting for April because okay. So yeah, for the breasts. Yep. And then August 8th would be another one. And then we start to, I don't like doing Mars in Cancer, especially this year, because it's going to square Neptune. And then it's going to square Saturn. So now we're waiting until September. And then we're going to see Mars is going to square Chiron, not good. Mars is going to oppose Pluto, not good. The next wave is going to be maybe when Mars is conjuncting, let's see. So that's going to be a full moon. There we go. So we could do something like, that's a Mercury and a Venus retrograde, so we can't do that. Mars is going to hit your sun, but that's going to start to square your natal Mars and also Uranus. Can't do that. So hopefully the dates that I gave you so far are good. I would say if you need something else, you're looking at waiting until about April of next year, unfortunately. Between Saturn, that's going to be making some squares to your Jupiter, which could also create some issues with healing. And then Mars, that's going to retrograde at the beginning of the year. But the dates that I gave you are good for health, breasts, or if you want to do anything reproductive. That's going to be very much kind of connected to the moon either way. And that's what I was looking at. Hopefully that helps, girl. Good luck with some of that stuff. And obviously, next time, talk to somebody before you schedule something. I have probably about a dozen clients that had all kinds of cosmetic things that they did that in November and it did not go well. All right, so who else do we have here? We've got Paloma. Could I use these dates you gave me for both surgeries? 100%, yeah. I made sure it was when the moon was waning. I made sure that there was good aspects to Mars, which is your chart ruler, and it deals with surgery. And I made sure there was good aspects to your natal moon, which is going to be anything feminine, particularly the breasts. Reproductive organ stuff is going to be more like Venus, but Venus or the moon, it could be either one. All right, so yeah, watch the video on Sunday. That's going to be Venus entering Taurus for astro weather, if you guys want to check it out. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you can see more of those videos. We've got Paloma, and then after Paloma, we have Lisa, and then Dana on the super chat. I don't know if she popped back in, if we got her there, if she paid the difference or not. I have not checked. All right, so let's see. Paloma, let's pull up her chart. Hi, my dear. Yeah, it's $55 for a reading. I think you sent $49.99. All right, so Paloma is March 7th, 1995, 11:20 a.m., and that was in Mexico. Best date for LASIK eye surgery. You guys are killing me. Paloma, is it your left or your right eye? Because that's going to make a difference. Thank you. I need to see the difference because actually the left eye and the right eye are different planets for different women. Women or men. So hopefully you're here so you can answer that question. All right, so the moon is the right eye. And the sun is the left eye. Yep, here right eye is, okay. So are you doing it on your right eye or are you doing it on both of your eyes? Both of them. Okay, so it's the sun and the moon. All right, so what do you got going on with your sun? Mars is on your sun, Uranus is on your moon. Wow, and the retrograde's been on both of them. Okay. Mercury rules your chart. Pluto's coming in conjunction with Venus. All right, so you are already scheduled on the 3rd at 3 p.m. I already had my consult good to go. I could also do 4:25 around 10 a.m. What city are you doing this in? Are you doing this in Mexico? Sorry to ask you so many questions, but you got to be specific when you're dealing with this stuff. St. Louis. All right, let's pull that up. St. Louis. And so it looks like you said 4:03 at 3 p.m. It's okay, no worries. All right, so we've got 4:03 at 3 p.m. Mercury's on your sun. I like that. It's trining Jupiter. I like that. Mars is also making a sextile to Uranus, which is good for health. The moon's in Scorpio, applying to a trine to the North Node, and also Mercury, which is good for health changes. It is squaring Pluto, but that's not the end of the world. Because I actually like the precision of like anything laser kind of related with the moon in Scorpio. And then all that stuff's in your 8th house, ruled by the sun. And the sun is applying to your Jupiter. Okay, so that's not terrible. Let's go look at the other one. And then you also have 425 around 10 or 11 a.m. Uranus is off of your moon. Venus is going to trine Venus. It's going to trine Pluto. Mercury is going to be sextiling your ascendant. Mercury is not quite a square to Jupiter. And you're going to have the moon that's going to be trining Mars and Mercury. Huh. I would have to say, in my opinion, because the sun and the moon both in Martian signs, and the moon is squaring Pluto, I'm not totally crazy about that. I'm also not totally crazy about Uranus being exactly on your moon, because that's gonna, like, Mercury on your sun means one of the eyes might respond much better than the other one. I mean, sun is trining Mars. That's about the only thing that's going on. But Venus square Pluto, I mean, are you going to have to do a payment plan for this? Is your insurance paying for it? Is there anything like that where there's going to be any qualms about how it gets paid for, or whether or not you can afford it, or, you know, like, have they talked to you about that yet? Payment plan. Do you know the interest and all that stuff? Like, have you gotten all the documents? Have you already gone through applying for it and all that? You've been approved. Okay. I mean, you're not going to have some of the same effects of like healing. Like you're going to have to heal after you're doing this, but it's not really the same. You're going to be light sensitive is kind of the feeling that I'm getting with that moon in Scorpio square Pluto. So yeah, you're having somebody drive you home. Not often do I have somebody be like, it can be this day or this day, because usually I don't like either one of them. And April is a very tricky month. But if I had to pick between the two, I would much, much, much rather you have Uranus off of your moon. So that way you don't have such a, because sometimes you'll get LASIK and it's such a distinct change in one eye that it's like perfect. And then the other one is like still playing catch up, as weird as it sounds, to like deal with like the light and kind of adapting to like the changes in your vision. And I also like the fact that you're going to have a trine that's going to be happening between the moon and also Saturn. Although, what time did you say that this would potentially be? Sorry, I'm going back and forth. Around 10 or 11 a.m. Okay, so actually the moon's going to be in Cancer. So let's go back. 10 or 11 a.m. Moon in Cancer. Sextiling Uranus and Venus. Yes. Yes. I would rather you do this on the 23rd. And it's going to be trining, loose trine, but it's going to be trining your sun. So we've got better aspects with your sun and your moon. That's really what I'm looking for. And the moon's going to be exalted here, and Venus is going to be on your moon. I was worried about the moon, so it's April 23rd, right? Did I read something wrong? Oh, 425. I was seeing 23. Okay, hold on. 25. No, the moon's going to trine Chiron. Venus is still conjunct your moon. The moon's going to square Uranus later in the day, but it's got a trine to Chiron. See, it's making an aspect. It can navigate this. But it's also Sun square Pluto. Leo moon near your natal Mars. No, you have Mars trine Mars. Mars sextile the ascendant. The moon conjunct Mars is what you need to worry about. Because Mars is going to be about health, and it's trining things. See, the problem is like, I thought it was the 23rd. I didn't realize it was the 25th. Pluto square the sun is the bigger issue that I have here. You can deal with this. This isn't an issue. It's the sun square Pluto. And Pluto's sitting right on your Venus. And Venus is going to be about aesthetics and things that kind of like deal with health and stuff. I mean, are those the only days? I don't have a calendar, but what day is the 23rd? Is there any way you can get the 23rd? Or do you have like both of these like tentatively already kind of set up? Because you said you were getting a ride from someone. I run out of contacts and travel. Yeah, I can try. What day is the 23rd on? Can you tell me? I don't have a calendar in front of me. I would go for that because, you know, the sextile that you have to Venus, the trine that's kind of like a loose trine. I mean, we could go back and we could look at the 3rd. It's a Thursday. Okay. We can go back and look at it, but I'm not so crazy about that. You're going to have there's going to be like a Pluto square either way. That's what's so crazy. It's like, okay, do you want moon square Pluto or do you want sun square Pluto? Like, which one is it going to be? Yeah, try to do it on the 23rd. That's a better day for you to do that, I think. And just for like the useless file, you really want to keep an eye on what's going on with your Mercury. You just recently had an eclipse on your Mercury, so that's why you're like, I'm traveling, but also like I need to like see and I need to do something laser oriented. And it's opposing your Mars, so you're like, I need to get this health stuff done because I'm trying to travel. So, there's certainly other time periods you could do it, but like, yeah, you're kind of like up against some things that you already have kind of planned, you know? You'll just call out, okay. Well, sorry to disrupt your work plans, but I'd much rather you do this during a time that's going to be better for your chart, you know? So hopefully that goes well. Let me know what happens. What's the recovery on something like that? I've never had to do it. I know people who have, but I haven't had to do it. All right, we've got Lisa. And then after Lisa, we've got Dana, and then we've got Alana. Thank you guys for your patience, by the way. I appreciate it. Y'all are really giving me some of your, I guess, best questions. Keeping me busy tonight. A lot of health stuff. I remember looking at like the year ahead, and I was like, oh my God. You know, I was like doing it in December. I was like, everybody is going to want to get surgery, you know, in April. Okay, cool. I'm glad to hear that. What's up, Lisa? Lisa's a Leo rising. She's got her sun in Capricorn. Her moon is in Aquarius. Lisa says, I was laid off from my job in December. A 6-year relationship ended in May. Last year was so rough all around. I'm exhausted. I have no motivation in seeing money losses and no dating prospects. Please tell me what's going on for me. All right, well, let's see what year you're in. So you're in a Scorpio Mars year. All right, so here's the deal. You're in a 4th house year, and it doesn't really matter like where Scorpio is in the chart. When you go through the Scorpio year, there's going to be some stuff that is going to end. You're going to see endings, and so your year will run from January 2026 to January of 2027. Mars is your time lord. So if you look at this, Scorpio is intercepted in your 4th, so it can be about kind of like confusing situations when it comes to intimacy, security, home, family, finances, and also your 10th, work and career related things. So your Mars and your Venus should have interesting aspects. So you've got Venus. It's pretty close to your Mercury in your 7th. And then Mars. Nothing squaring it. That's good. You do have a little bit of like a square between Mars and Uranus. A sextile between Mars and Uranus. But it's technically in your 5th. So what was kind of, I guess, like baked into this year was that you were going to be coming to this realization that certain things last year needed to, you know, end and change relationship-wise, right? So, okay, you're kind of coming out of that. Maybe you're healing some toxic habits and relationships, evolving. I mean, look, Pluto going into your 7th house was going to do the same thing. I have not seen a single Leo rising that's telling me that they have no issues in relationships, whether they're single or they're in a committed relationship. And Pluto hasn't even gotten into your 7th house yet. It's going to fully be there next year. So I think more about where your natal Mars is and the fact that it's in the 5th, where it's like certain things have to kind of come to an end, you know, changes with potentially, it could be, you know, old ways of looking at security. And maybe part of your security was baked into, oh, well, I have a relationship, I have a partner, you know? And so now that that's been removed, you're asking yourself, like, do I like where I'm living? Do I like what I'm doing work-wise? You know, like, what do I need to change? And Mars is also tied to your career, at least by your Placidus chart. So this is a year where you learn to develop your own personal talents. You learn to be more kind of confident. You learn to be willing to take risks, are more open to, obviously, kind of like dating. Relationships is more 7th house. And if you've got Mars that's tied to your 4th house, it tells me that you're going to be tapping into how you can be like getting creative and trying to find ways to make money from home, right? Okay, moving might be one of those things that may really be coming up for you, especially in the fall. Like, you know, when those retrogrades happen in October and November, they're going right through your 4th house. So you can put that on back burner if you want to. But I think that it's more of a focus right now as planets are getting ready to go through your 10th house to really focus on career stuff. And then you could pivot based off what's happening with that stuff as you're kind of getting into like the later months, like after August. You've also got Jupiter in your 12th, which honestly, you know, you have Saturn there. So it looks like you've just been using this year to kind of like rest, recuperate, be on your own, sleep, process emotions, take it all in, and then like come to terms with what's ending. Well, what has ended this year, right? Potentially a job, that's Saturn. Certainly relationships, that's the traditional ruler of Aquarius. And this has been squaring Chiron. So you're kind of just like, it's just been me, you know, healing, you know, and like, yes, depleted. I've heard that from a lot of my Leo risings with Cancer, Saturn and Cancer in the 12th especially. They're like, where is home? Where am I going? Where am I going to be safe? The positive is that this is a year where I think like Leo risings, they kind of took it in the shorts, like, you know, maybe at the beginning of last year at the Mars retrogrades, and then definitely like with Jupiter in the 12th house. But Jupiter can enhance things and make things feel like so much bigger until they pop. So like if there's a job that you were outgrowing, relationships that weren't working, like whatever, like you were going to see that stuff kind of happen and then you were going to be alone. But Leo risings, I think, have some of the best kind of glow up vibes that you're going to see of all of the 12 signs this year, because Jupiter is going to go into their 1st house. It's going to be about kind of getting their groove back. It's certainly about kind of being seen as like a little bit of like a sex kitten, or, you know, like making some changes to your appearance, feeling more flirty, kind of creative, and like dating again, because it rules your 5th house. So there is this kind of creative rebirth, lots of opportunities for self-employment. I also think that with the trines that's happening to Saturn, which is kind of close to your 10th house, could also stabilize your career. But we need to see something going on with Mars. Well, Jupiter is trining Mars. Saturn is trining Mars. And Aries, you're kind of picking up like the same transits as like the Cancer risings, you know, where Saturn's kind of going into the 10th house. It hasn't happened yet. It's going to be more so like next year. She says, yeah, I would have thought that trine my Jupiter would have been more positive. Not when it's in moksha houses. No. And not when it's hitting your Saturn retrograde, where there could have been a sense of false security when it comes to relationships. And also Saturn retrograde in your 12th, it's like, ooh, like you have a tendency to have relationships that like kind of fall apart and then they vanish and then they come back. And maybe they invade your dreams, or you kind of feel like you're connected to them psychically. So I could see that happening, but I would be super open to these eclipses coming into your 7th house, where there's going to be new people, and it means that there's going to be new friends, there's going to be new connections. Yeah, I'm a relationship mess. I'm sorry. I've heard so many Leo risings that have told me that. They're like, I am like such a mess and I'm just like healing. But part of that's also the eclipses, you know, I mean, they didn't start until Aquarius until this year, and they're going to really be playing out, especially over the summer. So there's going to be some bigger changes relationship wise. But I would say order of operations would be, you know, you're about to see Venus is going to go through your 10th house. That's going to be a bigger time to focus on your career. And Venus is in its home sign and it's squaring Pluto. So it's basically saying we have to kind of put relationship stuff on the back burner, focus on work, traveling, training, learning, certification. I would be saying, if you're not working, what are you doing to boost your skills, right? Are there online certification courses, training courses? Are there things that you could be doing through kind of like long distance education? I mean, there's so many things that are online now. Like there are so many people who are like offering courses, and institutions, colleges that are offering like technical stuff that could really help you kind of expand some of the stuff that you're kind of doing in your career or in your field. And if not, then it's going to activate your Mars, and it's going to be talking about things that are going to be more kind of creative, or things that could allow you to be more independent. And then obviously Taurus season is generally pretty big for career stuff. You'll see all the planets start going into Taurus here. That's going to be around late April. And then Mars is going to go into your 10th house, which is definitely going to be about being busy at work, getting out of the house, getting out into the kind of workspace, probably going into interviews. And I would assume there's an opportunity when the sun hits Uranus for you to potentially have a job opportunity as early as the end of May, right? Oh, there you go. Yes, I've been doing training and advanced my psych degree in learning astrology. There you go. So there it is. So those things are actually really going to help you. And it's possible that, you know, there could be some really great networking opportunities. Like Sun Uranus means in late May, like the last 10 days of May, you could go to a career event, you could go to a networking event, you could be socializing with people and connect with somebody who's like, I want to introduce you to somebody, you know, and it could be relationship oriented or professionally as well. And if you're looking to start your own thing, yeah, I love that for your Mars year. I mean, yes, but you're doing it from home. And Scorpio is like psychic and intuitive, and you've got Mars, Neptune in the 5th, where you're like, let me do my own thing. Trine and Chiron, it's going to be about healing. Like maybe some of it is still kind of coming together and you're trying to figure it out. I think a lot of it is still going to be community building to some extent. And then you'll see that you're going to be like a hot commodity when Jupiter's sitting on your ascendant. So that's going to be here, right around August. And then Mars is going to come into your ascendant too. So when are you moving? I mean, sometime between August and November is what it looks like to me, right? And then I also think that I would keep an eye out for when you get into your new year, because right around the time that you're coming into your birthday, Mars is going to go retrograde. So it's going to retrograde in your 2nd house. So yeah, I would be focusing on how can you move and downsize and get into a place where it's going to be more affordable or you can save money. That's what I would be focusing on with Mars retrograde, because Leo risings need to keep an eye on their finances in this next year. And then boom, you go into your 5th house here, ruled by Jupiter. Natal Jupiter's in the 8th. You can make more money doing spiritual work, and Jupiter's in your 1st house. You see, like, I think that there is a sense of you just trying to be more conservative this year all around, and just really thinking about, you know, like how and where you're investing your time, and like in a business sense, but also in a relationship sense. Wanted to book a one-on-one with you again, but you're so popular. I know I need a clone. Yeah, I'm always booked out like 4 months at a time right now. It's crazy. That's why I do the live, so I can still hang out with you guys. But, you know, I love the energy of like the North Node hitting your moon, which is great for doing like psychic and intuitive work or healing work. And I also like the eclipse that's going to be on your Pallas and on your Venus. That can be really strong for, I mean, you may have a knack for like relationship astrology, right? Especially with all that stuff in the 7th house, or like collaborations that you could be doing with other people. So like how you can be working with other astrologers, or you can be joining networks, or you can be like referring back and forth to other people. Like the North Node is going to be very strong. And I've told a lot of my Leo risings, you're going to have a glow up either because you're going to meet like a well-to-do partner who might be like in the public eye in some way, or it can be that you're connecting and collaborating with people who have like audiences, or they have like practices and things that are established astrologically. And there can be some kind of like kind of complementary kind of energies that can be kind of happening there, right? Yeah, and obviously you got Jupiter, that exalted, well not exalted, but Jupiter in its domicile that's sitting in your 8th trine Saturn. That's a lot of wisdom when it comes to like occult related things. And I don't know what kind of astrology you like to practice, but anything that's going to be like related to relationships, like how to better understand people, and like teaching synastry, talking about compatibility, doing like election dates for weddings, you know, like things like that, or trying to help people figure out how they could better kind of connect and like find people who are a match. I think you would do really well with that. But yeah, Jupiter isn't, I mean, I have just found like, especially, well, maybe it's because Jupiter is aspecting my Saturn too. I'm like, man, like, and not only, I have Jupiter opposed Saturn right now, and I have transit Saturn squaring my Jupiter and my Saturn, because Jupiter and Saturn are in opposition. So it's sweet and salty. Expansion and contraction is what you always see with Saturn, I think. And especially if Saturn's your 7th house lord, it actually means that it's clearing relationship karma. It's your Pluto square Uranus that's shaking everything up, because it's opposing your ascendant squaring Uranus. Like you're going to meet somebody that's going to like make you move. Like that's what's going to happen. You know, so even if you don't move, like some of the changes that are going to kind of happen in relationships are going to incentivize a move and like a leveling up. I'm certified in attachment theory. That's wonderful, especially with Venus and Aquarius with Mercury. It's like, let's learn about how to like, you know, love differently, or like be free, and like what other people need and how to like relay their needs. And like attachment is also very much like that Saturn, you know, in Cancer retrograde, like how it has connections to like home and ancestral kind of patternings and that stuff. And obviously Saturn square Pluto too. So like where we play out some of our own like little mini traumas, you know, in relationships. Yeah, there you go. Those who can't do teach. Yeah, I feel that. Really good at giving advice, not so great at taking it. Yeah, I always say like some of the most challenging people are really good at giving advice. Okay, well, let me know what happens, because the other side of this, when you start coming out of it, is after the retrograde in Pisces, in Cancer. So when you're getting to like the end of July, you know, and then Jupiter is coming into your ascendant, it's going to be like, bing, you know, you're just remind yourself you're a butterfly. I feel like you're in your cocoon phase right now. But teaching, traveling, learning, yes. And then focus more on the networking aspect, especially in kind of the late spring, early summer. All right, we've got, who else do we have here? Looks like next is going to be Dana. And then I got to add a couple people. And then let's see, who else do we have? So Alana, Mayad, Talon, Yara, Grace, Brenda, you guys are all coming up. You're welcome. All right, let's pull up Dana's chart. There you go. All right. All right, Dana, November 2771, 9:12 a.m. in St. Petersburg. You're the first person to ask about the full moon. It only took 2 hours. What can you tell me about the full moon in Libra for myself? Am I moving sometime soon, or am I buying a home that I've been renting for years? Anything you could tell me about career or family? Well, obviously you're going to ask about all those things, because as a mutable sign, as a cardinal sign, it's squaring all your stuff, right? So let's pull that up. So the long and short of it is this. The full moon that's taking place on April 1st, it's in Libra, right? So it's our relationship to something hitting a climax point. So it's going to be technically tied to your 10th house whole sign. So it's going to be more about your relationship to your career. And what's interesting is that it makes this polarity, that's the opposition to the sun that's in Aries. So it's saying, okay, there's some big highlights career-wise where maybe, you know, there's changes happening at work, or there's big, you know, presentations, or your relationships with work is getting kind of highlighted, or maybe you're completing a project or a job. And it is trining Pluto, so it does say that it is good for anything connecting to your career, your status, and also your money. However, it's ruled by Venus, and Venus is in the 4th house. So it's looking like you're ready to take on some new kind of undertaking or responsibility when it comes to a home matter or a family matter. So it's going to be more property, it's going to be more real estate, it's going to be more connected to your physical home space, whether or not you're feeling secure or fulfilled, right, in the home that you're actually living in. Mars is more dealing with your home. And like a lot of my Capricorn and Capricorn risings, you know, just since Saturn went into the 4th house, there's been this sense of being like, okay, you know, am I going to put down roots? Am I going to stay here? And so for some of you guys, it's like kind of hunkering down and feeling like, sure, okay, if you've been renting something, you're going to buy it. But there's also been a little bit of like this trepidation, or maybe not getting a lot of clarity in regards to, you know, where you're living. And I would watch for when Mercury comes into conjunction with Saturn and Mars personally, because landlords is going to be more, I think, the 6th house, which is Mercury. So you're going to see this happen. When Mercury starts coming into conjunction with your moon, so I would say April 15th, Mercury is going to conjunct Mars and Saturn, so that's going to be around April 20th. And then these planets are all going into your 4th house. It's like, can you make a deal with the landlord? Yeah, the landlord has not been wanting to sell to us, but it feels like this is home. We're trying to reconvince him. Here's the deal, though. Saturn and Neptune have been on your moon, which means they've been very reluctant to make a decision and they don't want to let something go. I also think that if this were me, you know, Saturn going into your 4th house, yes, you want to kind of put down roots and you want to like stay put, but there could be issues with the foundation of the home. There could also be probably a need to like go and genuinely get it like, yeah, like get it checked out, right? Get it evaluated, get it appraised. Because I think he's crazy not to take the offer, because likely when you see either a Venus retrograde or a Mercury retrograde in the fall, he may be more open to it, but I think by then the market will have changed, right? I've been renting for him for 5 years. I'm now getting qualified for a mortgage this week. There's probably water issues that you've had with the house. Like Neptune is going to be issues with water, or it could be issues with mold, or things like there's problems with the kitchen, or issues with like stuff flowing. And you have to be careful because Saturn and Neptune can like hide things that you don't see, like in the walls, under the floorboards, you know, issues with like mold, or there could be things that are kind of breaking down that he may know about. Like, do not just blindly go, I love this house, let's try to make a deal, let's strike a deal, I want to buy it, and like not get a full inspection because I think that would dramatically impact the value of the home. Because Saturn's also about working hard for your money, and now that it's in the 4th house, you want it, but this is actually trying to get you to do something new. And I know you don't want to do that and you're reluctant, but I think that the more that you start to see, especially in April, you will have problems in your kitchen. I don't like saying that, but you will. Mercury and Mars and Saturn is like, you could have issues with like a furnace or a hot water, you know, like having problems, like what is it, like the water heater having issues, you know. No, I'm totally changed, I would move. Okay, because I don't feel good about this. I'm just being intuitive here. I don't feel good about it. And I also think with the North Node coming into conjunction with Mars, it's trying to get you to really feel your way into, are there other areas where can your money be better spent? Most likely you will find when you have a positive transit to Mars, like the eclipse that's going to be on your Mars at the end of summer, you will be rewarded for either looking for something else, or you're going to find that there is like a turning point where you feel more confident with being like, yes, I'm going to sign on the dotted line, I'm going to buy something. And that would be right around the end of August. And then when you have Saturn go into your 4th house, that's when I think you're going to get more settled. And what's wild is it's going to oppose your natal Uranus, which means like you might be working from home, or you may be in a position where, you know, because something's changing with your job, you're going to be spending more time at home. Like I will look at the astrology, but I'm also a realist. And I would be very careful taking on a mortgage with some of these aspects. Pluto on your North Node means it's going to be very enticing to buy a house. Saturn in the 4th house means you want to get locked into something, but you could very much find with like Saturn in the 4th house opposing Uranus that there is some unexpected things that happen with the house that can be costly, or there can be some unexpected things that are happening at work, which then, let's say, obviously touch wood, you're having an issue with work or there's time off, and then suddenly you're deep with a mortgage. You know, we're starting an online store, about to launch that now. Okay, cool. Travel 1,500 miles a week as a sales rep. I was hoping we could move closer towards the mountains. So see, that's the thing, is that this chart wants you to find a place that's going to solidify being able to be home more, rather than traveling out of the house and coming back, and traveling out and coming back. Like Uranus is obviously kind of like a very busy and kind of erratic work schedule. And Pluto on your North Node means that you are feeling ready financially. But I think that I would really be cautious, and you really have until like, I mean, you could make a change work-wise that could impact where you're living in the fall. You could have eclipses that are going to be there in February of 2027. That tells me you're reassessing a financial situation, so you could move in the spring. So it's like, honestly, I personally think, like, I'm not God, like I don't have a crystal ball, but I would be more focused that you're gonna have a home that you can spend time in, and you're gonna have a home that you know doesn't have problems, rather than being like, oh, this is easy, we already live here, let's buy it. Like, nope. Especially like Chiron coming in conjunction with Saturn, like you're gonna start seeing if there's issues with your place. You're either going to feel like I have to fix it myself, or I'm going to have to tell my landlord, and I don't want to have to deal with the backlash from the landlord, you know? So you're either going to be like, I'm going to try to fix it, or I'll pay to fix it. And I would wait. I would wait and make sure that everything's solid in the work department. And you can look at some places if something pops up and it's like perfect in August, but if not, you're going to have basically February through April of next year to make a purchase, and it would work a lot better with your chart when it's starting to come out of an opposition with Uranus and it's now trining what's going to be your Jupiter. You're going to get more bang for your buck, basically. With the full moon, it's just about conclusions and completions at work. Like, you're going to have a lot more meetings. You're going to be seen a lot more. It can be where you're having to really kind of like follow up with some of like the people who are like within your territories. It can also mean that it's giving you the opportunity to like have fun at work, because Venus is going to be in your whole sign 5th. So being creative in how you're connecting with people, and your professional relationships, you know, possibly actually going very well, because it's going to be in conjunction to Uranus, which rules money. So you may actually have a couple of like really great deals that go through and you're like, wonderful, there's a new like office or this or that I'm working with. And it's allowing you to feel like you can come back home and you're feeling a little bit more confident with what happens. So it's nothing dramatic, but get ready. Get ready for Uranus going into your 4th house. You're going to spend a lot more time at home. I don't know why. Sometimes Saturn in the 4th house can be, obviously, touch wood, like family members who are older, who are having health issues, you know, keeping out for parents, things that deal with like aging and, you know, ailments and anything that's connected to like bumping heads, hitting heads, strokes, dementia, that kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of that with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. And if something like that's going on, or something's going on within your home unit with your friend, with your family, immediate family, it's going to be bringing you back home. And as soon as Saturn starts opposing Uranus, you're going to be like, oh, I have to be home more for some reason. One biological brother we haven't spoken to in years. Well, that makes it a little bit easier. Then it's more about kind of figuring out where home is going to be for you then. That's interesting that you have a brother that you're kind of like estranged from, and you have your moon at 29 degrees. That's very interesting. And then Uranus is coming into conjunction with Saturn. So see, there is some work stuff changing. Your schedule and your territory might be changing soon. But I like Uranus hitting Saturn, because you're going to have more freedom. Trining your Pluto, great for expanding your career. Trining your North Node. Like, all the money stuff is syncing up, and you're really embracing some of the changes with your schedule. Oh, that's a bummer. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, I would also say like Uranus opposing your Sun. So, you know, that's also going to be some changes. You've been kind of like a creature of habit with Saturn connected to your 6th, but now that's going to kind of shake things up, and you're probably going to have like new like territories, or you're going to be working with like new like clients. Something like that's going to happen, and you're going to be traveling even more, but that might broaden your horizons in terms of where you're thinking about kind of like living, right? Yeah, the Venus retrograde, the Mercury retrograde could have brought him back in, but a Jupiter transit will do that. So like down the road, you'll see like, you know, Mars retrograde conjunct Jupiter. You know, you'll be seeing that at the beginning of 2027. That can bring him back in. You've been asked to go to another state, yeah, and train people in those areas. Yep. This is about your territory, your schedule, your travel, and like working with new people comes in. And the trine to Pluto is great because you become like a leader, and also the trine to transit Pluto is good for your confidence and for your money. So those things I would welcome. Maybe it is going to allow you to have more time at home, right? Maybe it allows you to make more money, so you're putting that into your home situation. But the full moon in Libra is just that conclusion of what's kind of going on with your professional relationships. So it's nothing too gnarly in your chart. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right. Okay, so then we have Alana. You're welcome. What's up, Alana? Virgo rising. You got another one, 29 degrees. All right, Alana says, I'm beefing with my landlord. That's always fun. Another unit is open in my building and is not quite as private, and my dog might bark, but it's a lot cheaper, and I think I'm going to, but I'm nervous. Also, what's going on in general with my chart right now? It's bananas. Beefing with your landlord, that's an interesting one. So part of it's like, you know, as of the beginning of the year, Saturn and Neptune were opposing your ascendant, and Neptune deals with landlords, and Saturn is connected to your 5th house of joy. So you're kind of like, you know, why is he, you know, being like a buzzkill, or like, why is he like so strict or difficult to get along to, or why is he like kind of like passive aggressive? Like, you can't really read him very well. And you also started the year off with all these planets that were going through Capricorn in your 4th house that was squaring your Mars and your Venus. So there was some relational kind of disharmony. All right, so that's done. things are going nuts in the chart because Mercury, your chart ruler, has been retrograde along the descendant. So it's a lot of like people not understanding you, a lot of misunderstandings, miscommunication, not getting on so well. And that's been squaring your natal Neptune, where you're like, what is the problem with trying to communicate, you know, what I need when it comes to my home and my living situation? Or like, why is there a lot of back and forth going on with other people? And the North Node has been in conjunction to your natal Mercury. So there's like a lot of you having to go, okay, routine, you know, focus, health, habits, you know, really keeping yourself grounded so you don't feel like you're going crazy. And this is also about your pets or your dog. So like the Mercury retrograde has been a lot of you going, okay, what can I or should I be changing, you know, about my routine, my pets, and also my home, because it's been sextiling your moon. And now you're going to find that the retrograde is over, but the intensity is not over yet. Probably dealing with the landlord gets interesting when Mars starts coming into your 7th house, because it's going to conjunct Neptune. So this is going to be about you being like, hey, I want to make the change at home, and it's going to be at a money degree. So the negotiation and the back and forth with him and coming to an arrangement to switch to another apartment, and whether or not you're going to have to pay another deposit again, whether or not it's going to be as cheap as he says it is. Read the fine print. Beware that other people are going to be a little bit more kind of like hard-nosed, and they're not going to be very tolerant. It's nothing you're doing. It's just, it is the way that it is, and both in relationships and as well as dealing with landlords. Now, the positive is that this is trining Uranus and Jupiter. So it can be talking about documents, agreements. So you might be going back and like looking at your lease agreement, determining what he's supposed to give you back for, you know, your deposit. And I would be like, okay, great. Is there a way that like I can have that translate into moving into this other apartment? Like, can we make a deal? It's about communication, negotiation, trying to be diplomatic, but other people are going to kind of act like jerks. And you'll see that especially around the 12th through about the 20th. And then that's going to start to subside. Now, after that, you're going to have your Mars return. You're going to have Mercury conjunct Venus. I almost feel like, you know, trying to approach him closer to the 3rd week of April would be better. Okay, it would be better. And that's really good for relational energy too. You know, Mars and Venus are conjunct. Mercury and Venus are conjunct. The end of April, there's like better harmony with other people. And then when you see a pretty prominent Jupiter square, that can also be about potentially switching apartments. So that could be right at the end of April going into May. But if you're not able to swing it until closer to May, that's still doable. And then the North Node is heading into conjunction with your Mercury. That's going to kind of be there for the next couple months. So spending a long time with a pet, working out, getting into a flow state, meditating, you know, trying to be busy. And it looks like you could have had some either changes with your schedule or with your health that was kind of going on during the retrograde over the last month, which has been a lot about concluding and kind of ending old relational issues and like making way for something new. You know, at least that's what it kind of looks like to me. Saturn and Neptune are squaring your North and your South Node. I think that's probably it. You know, whenever we have planets that are squaring the North and the South Node, especially outer planets that move very slow, it represents something called a skipped step. So if the North Node's in Cancer, which is going to be about, well, having authority over your career, your job, your identity, even, you know, anything that deals with security, and the South Node in Capricorn, which is about releasing, letting go of old responsibility, you know, heavy work, anything that deals with maybe, you know, being in a place that feels cramped, or it doesn't feel personally fulfilling, or it feels like a little too cold or not like homey. Now Saturn goes into a square with these two placements. So it means that you have to confront other people if you need emotional security, home, or, you know, a solid place to live. And you also have to be willing to kind of like just put up with the same old that you've always put up with. And Saturn rules your South Node. It's in the 2nd house of money. So it's literally going to him and being like, look, dude, I can't afford the rent. You know, I can't. And I would like to move into the smaller place. And, you know, is it possible that we can work this out and make a deal? Because I'd really like to stay. And that's how I would approach it, you know, especially with Pluto squaring your Saturn right now. I think that's part of it. And I think that if you're doing that, you're kind of being like, look, let's make a deal. How can we work together? You know, I'm going to move out of this place. You're going to have to give me my deposit back. And then I'm just going to turn around and give you the deposit. So is there a way for me to go in here? Like, clean the place up, organize it. You do a walkthrough. You decide that, you know, the house is, or the apartment is, you know, completely intact. So then you then keep my deposit so I can move into this other place. There is a way to work together, but I think that Saturn and Neptune is like, you're feeling like other people are like passive aggressive, or like they're not maybe very self-aware, and like they're not very receptive or helpful when it comes to some of the changes that you're trying to make. And it can also make you feel like you're kind of lost and confused when it comes to dating and relationships. So not making any big decisions maybe relationship wise until after April. You'll find that you know, that will change when some of the eclipses kind of come through, especially as we're getting closer to August. There's going to be probably some relational changes and also some job changes as well. But this is like very similar to like a Libra rising chart right now, where it's about a lot of things that are going on with other people. And it's like whether or not you get sucked into other people's said things. That full moon also, even though you're a Virgo, it is going to be in your first house. So around the beginning of April is when this is kicking off that energy of, okay, me, my emotions, my feelings versus others. And if you look at this, it's going to create a grand cardinal cross in your chart. 15, 12, 15, you know, 12, and it's very, very close to your Mars and your Venus. So it's going to be also about dealing with money, savings, other people's resources. So take a breather on the full moon in Libra, because it's going to light this chart up like a Christmas tree. And I think a lot of Libra risings are going to be like, you know, kind of sick and tired of having to be the ones that have to do everything for everybody else. And whether that's emotionally or in a relationship or financially or whatever. And with Venus being the ruler of this and it's landing in your 8th house, it makes me feel like it's going to be about you being like, no, I'm not just going to, you know, give you something. I'm not just going to give you money, or I'm not just going to, you know, make the sacrifice. You need to do something for me. And it might mean that it's going to be something connected to money, especially when it comes to your home and your living situation, because Venus is going to try in the South Node. So if somebody owes you a favor, try to see if you can negotiate with him to get him to work with you. You can always move again. You know, I know that that's maybe not what you want to do, because Capricorn moon's in the 4th house. They like to be somewhere and they like to kind of stay put and like get comfy. But you've moved a lot if you've got Jupiter and Uranus in your 3rd house. Like, you're no stranger to kind of learning how to kind of pick up and be a little bit more adventurous with that Sag in your chart. Certainly when Jupiter is making some better aspects, like when it's trining your Mars and your Venus over the summer, or even Saturn coming into a trine with Jupiter. I mean, maybe downsizing and doing something that's a little bit cheaper with, you know, Saturn square your moon is smart, because it'll set you up to make some bigger decisions about where you want to be down the road, be that the fall of this year, or even like the spring of next year. And it could help you save money if you're like trying to pay off a car, or you're trying to buy a car, or if you're trying to travel. Like, the money that you save would actually be really great. And you have the ability to do more with it, you know, as you're kind of getting into October and November. So hopefully that's helpful. But it's definitely Saturn, Neptune square the nodes for sure. And North Node conjunct Mercury, where you're just like, you really need routine right now. That's what's really going to help you stay focused. All right. All right. So now I've got the other people that I got to kind of pepper in here. So Mayad, Talon, Yara, Grace, Brenda, you guys are my last ones. And let me just plug them in one by one. So I think I have a few of you. Let me see. So there's one. right, thanks guys, appreciate it. I had to plug in some charts there. All right, so we're gonna start with Mayad and then Talon and then Yara, okay? All right, so let's bring that chart up. Capricorn rising, Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Pisces. All right, the full moon in Libra is almost conjunct my Mars. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, it's pretty close. All right, so it's almost conjunct your Mars. Basically, it's not, I mean, once again, you might see some of the impacts because you are a Capricorn rising. You're going to hear, oh, the full moon is connected to, you know, like your career. But really, the Scorpio full moon next month, I think, is going to be more career oriented for you. So the moon is actually in the 9th house, which is going to be more about promoting potential travel. Moon conjunct Mars, I like it. It's kind of sexy, and it might bring up opportunities for you to be planning a trip, going somewhere, doing something, and it is trining your natal Jupiter. So that is actually really great for travel. It's great for business deals, money, you know, feeling a little bit more abundant. And you're going to see the Sun and the Moon in opposition, and the Sun's kind of highlighting in your 3rd house, oh, short distance trips, contracts, communication. So it's not really doing anything relationship-wise, because your Saturn and other people are the moon. If anything, this is going to enhance that feeling of when am I going to meet somebody? When is somebody coming in? When is there going to be a relationship? You know, that's what's going to come up for you. And it's going to be even more so inflamed because it's squaring Jupiter. But it's actually saying there's a need to really focus on healthier habits, working habits, travel habits, relational habits. And it's probably just going to make you very busy. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting with the Jupiter square. So it's not relationship oriented right now, especially because the moon is meeting with a malefic. So it's more about like catering to your professional relationships more than anything. The fact that it's conjunct Mars is kind of, like I said, it's kind of sexy. I mean, I do like that. You might be feeling like, you know, all of a sudden you have, you know, like wanderlust, kind of like the travel bug, and you want to go somewhere and you want to do something and you feel like you want to kind of impulsively plan something. And I would say be careful because it's going to be opposing Saturn. That traveling, you know, the 3-day period around the full moon is not going to be ideal, and don't be booking anything either if you can help it. You'll see more relationship stuff that's going to come up when there is an aspect happening between, you know, the moon and also Saturn. So if you look, the North Node's in conjunction to your moon, so that can bring a relationship in, you know, anytime between now and I'd say the end of summer. And Jupiter is already kind of trine that. So Jupiter's now coming into a trine with your Juno and your Sun. My money would be on when Jupiter is actually in your 7th house, which could really enhance the likelihood of like a spouse coming in, and Uranus going into your 5th house, which could mean that there's going to be some new exciting changes when it comes to dating and relationships. So we're looking at closer to end of May into mid-June when Venus and Jupiter meet. See, something's going to happen here. When Venus and Jupiter meet, there's going to be a oh my gosh, like who is this person? And you're kind of like infatuated by someone. And then Mercury will retrograde, and Mercury is influencing Uranus, which means you might be going back and forth with 2 people. Or you meet 2 people and you're like, oh, which one do I like? And there's an opportunity also to really connect with somebody through work, right? Because Mars is connected to your career. It's going through your dating house. So relationships don't really stabilize, I don't think, until closer to the end of July. When this Mercury retrograde's over, when this Mars-Uranus conjunction is over, and then you're going to see things kind of proceed forward here. And you'll see another Sun-Jupiter conjunction in about July. Obviously, let's go look at your 40 this year. So you're in a Taurus Venus year, whole sign 5th house. Venus is a good year. That means that April, May is when you start thinking about dating and like your status changing in some way. But your ruler is Venus, and Venus is debilitated, and she's conjunct the South Node. And Venus is conjunct Jupiter. So, excuse me, Juno. So there is a possibility with that conjunction that you meet some kind of romantic partner through a friend or at a party, or like a friend plays matchmaker. So I want you to be social when you're having Venus going through, obviously, Taurus. So really pay attention to like the whole month of April. Watch when the Sun goes through your 5th house. You're hopefully like trying to meet people and date. But then the big one is going to be when Venus and Jupiter meet. Because the 5th house is true love, right? So when the ruler of the 5th house meets with Jupiter, that could be really unifying you and a partner. And so you've got one here. You've got one here where Juno and Jupiter are conjunct, and then you've got one here. You have like a triple transit. And I don't generally say like, oh, this will happen, because like nobody can fully accurately predict the future because you have free will. But when I see 3 transits that are very much about long-term relationships that are all kind of syncing up at the same time, I mean, I would say things get really interesting here at the end of June. Even Juno is going to square Juno. Jupiter is going to be trining your sun. Yeah, my money would be right around the end of June to, I would say, August. That's the time window. And expect the unexpected. There could be more than one person that you meet. You could be meeting somebody that you think you like, and then you meet another person when Mercury goes retrograde. And I see a lot of like women, you know, they meet their spouse when Jupiter's in their 7th house, or when Juno is conjunct Jupiter. That's another kind of meeting a spouse transit. Or when Jupiter is trining, you know, or making aspects to your natal Juno. You have all 3 of those things happening. And then the moon, that one's even the bigger one. You know, the Jupiter transits every 12 years. But the North Node conjunct your moon right now is about opening up to the idea of having like security and stability in relationships. And you really want somebody who's choosing you. And your moon's at an 8 where you're like, oh my gosh, these like readers or these readings or these psychics keep telling me I'm going to meet somebody and I can feel it. But like, where is it coming from? You know, don't try to control it. You'll meet somebody wherever your moon is. So your moon is technically in the 2nd. So you could meet them on your lunch break. You could meet them near a bakery, a bank, a bar even, because it's in Pisces. You could also meet them when you go through some big financial changes, or when there's like a big home change. Didn't you just buy a house? Was that you, if I remember correctly? Did you just buy a home and you're like finishing, kind of like making all the updates to your home? Because that also enhances the likelihood of meeting someone. But I would say to anybody who's got a Pisces moon, you know, Capricorn rising with the North Node transit, I'm like, oh, you're going to meet someone. One of my really good friends, she's also Capricorn rising. She has a Pisces moon. She was like shopping around for houses and didn't know if she wanted to buy something or she wanted to move. And then she decided to sell her house. And I was like, dude, sell your house, like hit the road, like you'll meet someone. And she did. She had the North Node hitting her moon. This was like a 1.5 years ago. And now she's like married. So it was very quick. It was like within like a year and a half. But you're going through those transits that I saw when she met, you know, her partner. So something that can help is like exploring your neighborhood, getting out to other areas of the city, you know, going for drives, going for walks, because it can be picking up that energy of the 3rd house and maybe doing some like short distance traveling. But because you have that moon that's in a trine to your Venus and it's squaring Saturn, it just comes with time. And there needs to be more of this emphasis on focusing on the home and the house building and developing the property. And that's what's supposed to kind of be the setup for bringing in a relationship. So, right, keep all of that stuff that's going to be kind of happening, especially for you, like right around June going into about July, August. That's when it's going to be like high season. What's up, Alana? We just did your reading. It was literally the last one. So I did do it for you though. You'll catch it. I don't know if you can scroll back, but it is there. All right, we've got Talon. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Give me some feedback and let me know. All right, Talon. Let's see. November 11th, 1993 in Detroit, 11:35. We're birthday twins. We have the same birthday. I'm curious about career love during this time. I'm in school full-time for aesthetics, and I'm curious because I'm graduating in 60 days and I could possibly move due to my relationship. Well, career and love's been in a little bit of like a tug of war. Big time. Because you were born with Saturn in the 7th house of relationships, and it was squaring, you know, your sun and also Pluto. So it's like where I live versus relationships, but relationships have had to be flexible for the last like year or two because you've been like really pursuing your career goals. So it's been just kind of like you going, okay, I just have to get through some of this work stuff and like get my career underway, and then I'll move, and then I can go into relationships. And It's all those like fixed T-squares that have been kind of going on, you know? So part of that's baked into your chart. What do I see with relationships? Well, Saturn rules relationships, and you have Saturn going into the 9. Relationships can go to the next level. So it could be, i.e., talking about long-term commitment, like engagement, marriage, but it could also mean that now that you're trying to kind of complete your education, you're going to feel like you have more time for relationships or for traveling or for moving. I mean, that's literally what it means, right? I'm seeing a lot of like Leo risings that are moving and relocating to go to school, and then they're with a partner. Or I'm seeing some of them that are like a partner's giving them a hard time and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to travel. So it really depends on a lot of other factors. But with Saturn square Pluto, that's a really difficult natal placement to have. And it doesn't mean that you can't overcome it, but probably needing to break away from being too wholeheartedly committed or like making sacrifices for partners so you can focus on your career has been the theme. And so now that you're kind of completing this, I do think that there is more of an open mind to the idea of moving and relocating to kind of stabilize relationships. You know, the North Node eclipse we just had was in Aquarius, you know, in mid-February. And that eclipse lit this chart up like a Christmas tree because it was like right on top of your Saturn. Let's go and look at that. It was right on top of your Saturn and it squared Uranus. So it was like new action with relationship, must change home, must change, you know, work stuff. And that's kind of like, you'll see that unfold over the next like 6 to 8 months. 6 to 12 months, maybe even 18. And then what's going to happen after this eclipse is like the halfway point is going to be Taurus season. So I'm hoping that if everything goes according to plan, as you're getting into like May or June, you know, you're completing the stuff that you need to with school. You're getting to a point where you're like, okay, you know, job hunting, you're contemplating moving. And there could definitely be a move or a change with your living situation. I would say the times that it really kind of comes up is probably going to be when Jupiter's crossing your ascendant. Because that could be about a change in your identity and also like where you're traveling to, where you're going, and like merging with another person. Another one could be when you see that Mercury and like Venus are doing their thing in their 3rd house. So that could be like kind of September, October. Although this looks a little tricky if you're trying to relocate, like I would probably advise you to do it by the end of September, because it could be a little rocky here in October with like a Mercury retrograde in your 3rd house with a Venus retrograde in your 4th. It almost makes me feel like if you move too soon and if you're not digging what's going on with where you're living, the apartment that you're in, you're going to want to move again, or there could be some relational issues because this is all going to square Saturn. And like, I'm wondering, are you going to be moving to an area that you haven't lived in and you're moving with a partner and then you have to be like, I don't like this apartment. Can we do something different? I would have to move, and it just makes sense for me to move, more sense for me to move closer to me. It makes more sense for him to move closer to me. It's an hour and 40 difference. His city is, okay, listeners, work with. All right. Well, I mean, I moved there once and I hated it. Okay, so that's one thing I would just kind of put out there is you may not like it. You may not like the neighbors. You may not like the parking situation. You may feel like it's just a space where it's not your own. Like I almost look at this and I'm like, is it the city that you don't like, or is it that you don't like the place where he's living? And is it possible to keep an open mind and be like, hey, can we find something that can be ours together rather than going back to an apartment that you don't like or a side of town that you didn't like? That could kind of come up too, right? But you're feeling like you're willing to make some concessions because, you know, Saturn is relationships and it's in the 9th and it's making an opposition to your moon next year. So it's kind of like either we do this, and I would say don't let history repeat itself, where if you know you don't like it there, then reassess whether or not you need some more time before you're willing to move, or see if you guys can find a place that can be best for both of you. But the trajectory of what's going on with relationships is like, it's going to change. North Node in your 7th house is you start to see what relationships are really made of. And those eclipses are going to really be kind of directing you towards something that's going to be more committed. And it's funny because like a lot of my Leo risings are going to be like, oh, I'm doing my thing. I'm focusing on my career. You know, I'm expanding. I'm living life. I'm traveling. And then like relationships will get more serious the more that you're kind of just like detached with the idea of like, you know, there being something committed going on. But anytime planets are around the later degrees of the fixed signs, it lights your chart up. So even when the North Node's hitting Saturn, you have to figure out how to kind of like really create better boundaries or commit in relationships, while Jupiter and Mars on your ascendant wants to travel. So maybe, you know, if there's too much togetherness, you have free time where you go and do things, or you're training or going to school. And this is going to square the North and the South. This is going to square your Sun and Pluto and Mars. Even if you didn't have planets here or here, I would say the North and the South node is going to make you hate where you're going to live in the fall. So try to be flexible. And if you know you're going to a situation you don't like, you can push moving until later, you know, kind of like the second half of November if you want to buy some time. Or if you want to say, hey, let's plan on moving to a new city or a new part of the city or a new place together, you could do that. And it's going to require some team effort. But Uranus sitting in your South node is going to keep work very busy. There's going to be a lot of options and ideas and things that you're considering doing. And it's possible with the South node lighting up your Mercury that you're like, you know what, you know, like now that there's so many options that are happening for you work-wise that you're graduating, you may not want to feel limited to having to just live in one city or just being with him. You might be like, well, there's other options out there. Like, do I want to go and explore those options before I kind of, you know, commit to the idea of kind of going and living here? So you may feel like you need a little bit more freedom, at least until the end of the summer, you know? Watch the eclipses, though. Now that they're coming up into your 7th house, it's really going to test relationships. Not in a bad way, but, you know, North Node Saturn is just like, are they mature enough? Are they, you know, are they a little, they're a little stubborn? Like, you're used to stubborn people. Like, it looks like your dad was a handful with your Sun, Pluto, Mars, square Saturn. So you're used to men that are like, I want it my way, kind of dominating. This is how it's going to be. This is what I like. And that materializes in your relationships. Or one of your parents. Could have been your mom, but usually the Sun Pluto is like men. So I look at that and I'm like, yeah, it's Sun Pluto. I'm a Sun Pluto too. I don't have the squares that you have, but certainly just like dealing with dominating figures, you know, it's just kind of like a theme. But I think that like the squares, like you have to be really careful because in a way they'll be like, well, you made this commitment. You said you were going to come here, and you have to be like, yeah, but we said we were going to do it different. Right. And so with Saturn and the North Node, that's going to be opposing Mars and Jupiter. It's like, you're going to notice you're going to be very flighty. You're going to be like, I think I need to go out of town, you know, or I think I have things to do, or like, I want to be like learning or traveling. There is a sense of Leo rising is not wanting to be tied down this year. And so if things get too heavy, you know, you might feel like you actually like the idea of being able to have the freedom to go back and forth. Right now you don't like it, but you actually might really appreciate it in the fall. So nothing has to get totally kind of sorted out until those retrogrades in October and November about the living situation. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, we've got Yara. Let me pull up your chart. You have to when you have that Saturn square the Sun and Pluto, otherwise you repeat patterns, you know? Yara is a Scorpio Sun, Sag rising, Moon in Virgo. 10/24/2000, 10/39 in Reston, Virginia. How are the current transits affecting me? What positive career developments are coming, especially working from home? Okay, well, what do you want to know about relationships or home? Or relationships or career? I mean, probably the biggest thing that's impacting you, I mean, there's a little bit of both, you know, to be fair. I mean, I think that Sag risings are going to continue to see South Node eclipses that'll be taking place in their 10th. It's going to be more prominent early next year, so some job changes there. And then you have a Pisces eclipse that's going to be in your 4th house where there's changes in the home and kind of living situation in August. But if I were a Sag rising, especially, you know, having like Venus, Pluto, you know, kind of Chiron in your 1st house, I'd be most focused on the fact that Uranus is about to go into Gemini because it's going to go into your opposite sign. So, you know, think about what happened last year. It was like the spring going into the summer, no, the summer going into the fall. Uranus went into Gemini. It was only there for like 0-ish to 1 degrees, and then it retrograded back. So you're going to see Uranus starting to come into an opposition with your Venus, where there could be some new exciting ways to communicate and connect and travel and learn from your partner. So you're going to have to practice kind of keeping an open mind and being flexible. And you can notice that partners can be like a little rambunctious. They can be like a little more independent than usual. And while that's happening, it's going to be in conjuncting your Sun. So it can mean that there is some differences of opinion about, you know, how to navigate the relationship and commitment. Nothing bad, but it's just different. And then it's going to come up and it's going to start opposing your Venus. And so if you notice Venus, Pluto, Chiron, this means that it's all about this energy of, my intensity, my passion, my needs, like my identity in the first house, and like obsession and kind of like fixation that kind of comes up with Venus and Pluto. Uranus is going to go into the 7th house. So where you're used to being like, okay, there's like a really strong pull towards relationships and I'm both very much in them with Jupiter in my 7th, while simultaneously wanting my independence, you'll see things that are going to kind of come through in your partner where they're going to be like, yeah, no, I need space too, or I want to travel and do things too. And you're going to be like, what? Like the way that you communicate with them is going to change. And so, especially because you have planets that are in the axis of Sagittarius and Gemini. Now, sometimes, and you'll hear some astrologers say, yeah, Uranus goes into your 7th house, and then it could be like a radical like breakup or separation, but not always. It can mean that there can be more excitement, that there can be more opportunities, and that you just need to kind of let them have a little bit more freedom. Uranus was your 3rd house of the mind. So I would be saying like reading with a partner, going for walks with partners, listening to podcasts together about relationships. Maybe it means that you're sharing your interest in astrology with partners. And it can also be a relationship to like siblings changing, relationships to neighbors changing, but your descendant is a 7. So at first it's going to hit your descendant more next year, but this year it's opposing your Pluto. So it is going to show you where sometimes there's like some things that are kind of double standards. And I'm just being honest, 5, Venus and Pluto on your ascendant at a 5 means that you're like, oh, I like knowing that I have like the allure and the attraction, and I can like kind of bring somebody in and I can kind of get what I want. Not in a bad way, but you know that you have some of those like charming kind of abilities. And when Uranus starts opposing that, you're going to see like people are not going to be as easily persuaded, or they're not going to be like as easily like allured. They're going to be like, no, let me do my thing. And you'll start seeing this kick up. That's going to happen in May. And then you'll definitely see this the first week of July. And then it looks like it's going to get to 5 degrees and it's going to oppose your Venus. Well, what does Venus rule, right? It's connected to friendship. So it can be, having some challenges in terms of relationships with friends and how you communicate. It can also mean that you're noticing that, if they're being kind of weird or they're needing some space, you're like, okay, I'm going to be hanging out with my friends. My friends are going to be there to kind of have my back. You'll see more career stuff that's going to change at the beginning of next year. Early 2027 is going to be like a Mars retrograde through your career house for January through April. I'd be more focused on what's happening with your relationship stuff right now. Like that's going to be front and center. Venus in opposition to Uranus, relationship changes, and Mercury retrograde will impact that. So I don't think it's about anything bad. I think it's going to be more like, discussing your fears and intimacy and how to go deeper and how to like merge with a partner and what you guys need in partnerships. But I've never seen like a Uranus in the 7th house or Uranus opposed Venus or Uranus conjunct the chart ruler that does not create a lot of changes. And like, to me, there seems to be a lot of like back and forth about who you are individually versus who you are in relationships. And it looks like you love very hard with Venus and Pluto conjunct, and like there is like a sense of like real like devout kind of commitment to people. Obviously you're Scorpio, so it's a fixed sign thing. But you also have your chart ruler retrograde in the 7th, where you'll realize that, sometimes you want things that are like not actually good for you, or you get into relationships where some of the relationship dynamics, they need to evolve, they need to grow, and you're reassessing how much you can give to other people while still kind of keeping yourself in balance. And over the next 2 years during that Uranus transit, you're going to see this. You're going to see this. And to some extent, I think it's first going to be more other people, but it also might be showing you where like some of the relationships, maybe even like the attachment styles in love and relationships are maybe not necessarily like the healthiest, and where you guys are having like relational dynamics because you're outgrowing ways of kind of behaving in the relationship. And you will see this. This will happen. It'll start this year, and then next year it can show you how to kind of better navigate, communication in relationships. And I think it can start to improve. But you are also, you haven't gotten into your Saturn return yet. So sometime around the time that you're also turning what looks like closer to about 30, 31 is going to be a big relationship year, because Saturn's going to be going into your 7th house and it'll conjunct your Jupiter. So there could be an even more serious kind of physical commitment, marriage, engagement around that time. It could happen sooner. And if you're in a committed relationship prior to that, that's when that whole relationship is going to become like reassessed, right? So sometimes especially when I'm talking to like clients who are younger, there can be a sense of me being like, well, yeah, this is what's going to happen like in 5 or 6 years, you know, and it doesn't make sense until you get there. But I think that the Uranus transit is going to be preparation for shaking out any of the bad relational dynamics you have where other people and you need to learn what's best for each other separately so you can actually come together in a relationship in a healthy way. So that way you're better prepared as you're getting closer to your Saturn's return so you can actually, you know, either stick with it or maybe if it's something isn't working, you can, you know, make some changes in a relationship. Sometimes Saturn along the descendant, it delays relationships or like commitments, you know. It's funny because you have like Venus, Pluto, and I have a lot of clients, actually quite a few clients that are from like 2000, where like the Venus, Pluto conjunction on the ascendant. I've seen several of you guys. You guys are like little vixens, but Chiron is there. So actually there is this sense of just, you don't realize like how much like raw kind of like sexual energy you guys have. Not to make it sound weird, but you do. And it's very alluring. And so then people come in and then they're like, oh yeah. And you're like, actually, I want love. And the way that you portray yourself versus how you really are in relationships are very different. And so there can be lots of relationships that can be built off of that chemistry, that physical connection. And then the deeper that you get into it, you're like, hi, I'm more than just that. Like, I want commitment too. I have feelings too, you know? And then you're trying to understand why people are treating you a certain way. And so you want to go deeper when you have Venus conjunct Pluto. You don't want it to be surface related. And if you feel like relationships are kind of surface-y, you're going to be like, no, this is not working for me. And then the Saturn, you know, Saturn in opposition to Venus, the Jupiter in opposition to Pluto kind of like kicks in. So you're still learning those lessons. They're going to come with time. But man, I could write a whole book about my Uranus in the 7th house transit. I mean, I probably will at some point, but I'll spare you. I'm just going to tell you that it starts with something crazy, and it definitely ends with something crazy. I'm in one, yes. So then you get it. But you'll have to let me know. Go and learn about Uranus transiting your 7th house. Great time to work with an astrologer, by the way. You know, and that may be part of something you have done in the last year is an interest in astrology because Uranus already went into Gemini. But I would really recommend that you actually go and get a session with somebody. Like sit down and talk to them probably when Uranus is in your 7th house. So like sometime next year, like around like June of next year, right when Mercury is retrograding and, you know, Uranus is in the 7th, great time to, you know, talk to somebody who's going to give you, you know, kind of perspective on your relationships, where your life is going. And you can even start talking to them if you want, you know, about Uranus conjuncting Jupiter, because it's going to be kind of setting up. And that will bring somebody either in a therapist, an astrologer, you know, a partnership, somebody who's going to inspire you. It could even be an author or a podcast or something you're going to listen to about relationships, and you're going to be like, oh my God, am I the toxic one? You know, something like that's going to happen. And it's not all you, because there's like a seesaw effect, but it's how you're reacting to relationships and like what you guys bring out in each other, if that kind of makes sense. So fun chart. All right. We've got Grace and then Brenda. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. And if you guys haven't already subscribed to the channel, please, so you can see more of these videos. It helps the channel grow. We hit 47,000 subscribers this week, so that's kind of cool. All right, Grace, 8/11/86, 9:38 p.m. in Douglas, Georgia. I want to know what you see in love and career. It's more, Love is going to be more Mercury, and you'll see some stuff that can kind of happen love-wise. That's not going to be later till the summer. And then Jupiter is going to be more career. So really there's a lot of moving parts. So as a Pisces rising, you know, you're ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter wants to bring growth. It wants to bring wisdom. It wants to make things bigger. It wants to have, you know, joy. And it's hanging out right now in Cancer. So it's in its exaltation, but it's still in your 4th house, which means there's a lot of feeling your way into thinking, emotionally protecting, you know, what new things you could be doing in terms of dating, relationships, or self-expression. Now, it is going to fully move into your 5th house, which is going to better enhance, you know, self-employment, creative projects, dating. And when it comes into conjunction with Jupiter, with Mercury, so your Jupiter, this is Mercury, You'll see at the end of June going into July, dating stuff will pick up. And then when Jupiter hits your sun in your 6th house in September, work and career stuff will start to significantly pick up. And I've said this before earlier, I think it was for Healing with, was it Healing with Chi? I think that was her name. But, you know, you guys are going to be able to have more time to do the things that you enjoy and the things that you love. All right. So Sun and Jupiter coming together in the 6th house is, oh, I'm going to have time to date. I'm going to have time to create. I'm going to be able to have fun. I can play, you know. And I think that with Jupiter and trining Saturn, it's just about making sure you're making time for things that you enjoy doing. It's been kind of hard, I think, for like Pisces and Pisces risings for relationships in the last year because you've had Saturn and Neptune in your signs. So you've been kind of confused and you need a lot more alone time. And then you've had eclipses in your 7th house, which you can, you know, strong relationships, they can make their way through that period. But, you know, Saturn right now is starting to come into an opposition with your Venus, both Saturn and Neptune. So there can be this sense of longing for relationships. And there can also be this sense of kind of like questioning, like, well, who am I becoming and like, what do I want? So that's a transit you need to watch out for. Like, I wouldn't make any serious decisions about relationships right now, getting in or out of them with like the Saturn opposition and like Neptune opposition to your Venus. That will start to ease up a little bit. Once again, July. You know, August. And then you'll have eclipses that are going to be in your 7th house of relationships more like next year. So you're going to see this closer to like February of 27. And that'll go hand in hand with some like Mars retrogrades. A lot of Pisces are going to either, I think, go in and out of new business relationships, in and out of relationships. There could be some financial disagreements in partnerships. So, you know, anything that you're doing in terms of moving in, buying a home, sharing stuff, paying bills, you got to be careful with that stuff this year because Saturn and Neptune means that you're really idealizing the idea of relationship or togetherness, or there's somebody in your life and you don't see them so clearly, and things will become a lot more clear to you at the beginning of next year as to whether or not that's what you actually want. But do I think that relationships are going to improve? Yeah, for sure. For sure, especially as soon as you see Jupiter come into conjunction with Mercury. I mean, you might meet somebody, if you're single, that can really be something pretty significant around the end of June going into July. And I also think with like Venus kind of hanging out in your 7th house and planets going into your 7th house, like September is when things would really start to evolve. But part of the challenge is now you've got planets in your 1st house squaring your career and opposing your relationship house. So there's a lot of like, well, what is it? Is it relationships or is it work? And I would be like, no, it's you. It's you. You're focusing on the things that are going to make you feel more joyful. And it might feel that some relationships are at a distance and some career stuff is a bit of a question mark. But now this is the time, I think, to get really serious and start thinking about how you want to make money, what your relationship with money is, what your values are. And a lot of you guys are facing some challenges financially with Saturn going into your whole sign 2nd house, but your North Node is there. So if you're not seeing this now, you're definitely going to start seeing this down the road next year when Saturn hits your North Node, where you're going to feel more confident, more self-assured. You know what you want. You're not willing to sacrifice. The relationship energy is a lot less messy. You know, in spring of next year, you've worked your way out of some of the retrogrades where there could be some ins and outs with partners, you know, in 2026. And then it's really going to start to get good going into 2027 because Jupiter is going to go into your 7th house. So a lot of my Pisces will be going into relationships, or they've been in relationships. Now they consider themselves more solid or stable, and the South Node won't be there either. So I think it's going to get a lot easier. But, you know, you meet people wherever your 7th house Lord is. And for you, it's technically in your whole sign 6. So it could be through health and habits. It could be through a new job. And in the 5th house, it's about something that's going to be creative and having fun. So over this summer, you got to go out, you got to do things, you got to be where there's live entertainment, there's time in the sun, there's creativity, there's art, music, right? Those kinds of things. That is going to open the door. And you've got just in the last couple of years, you've gotten kind of snaked. I think between Pluto in opposition to your 7th house Lord, there's been this feeling of, why does everybody else get somebody? Why not me? And then you've also seen that there has been, eclipses that have been kind of going on through your 7th house and your 1st house. So you have had to be kind of more self-focused. What it's trying to get you to do is not focus on feeling like security is going to come from another person. It's trying to get you to more feel like, okay, let me go and create this lifestyle and do the things that I want to do, and then finding somebody who's going to have a similar kind of interest as me. So that window really starts to open up in like June and July, but there still is some refining and some assessment that's going to kind of go on both like around Halloween and then again the beginning of next year. then it starts to get kind of fine-tuned, right? How do you like in Pluto square your moon? That looks also a little tricky too. This is also saying it's about like some of more like the platonic friendships, not necessarily the romantic friendships. But that also goes hand in hand with big changes, either with like your mom or with like your home or your living situation. So been through that. It looks like it's been a lot of fun with the opposition to Mercury and a square to Pluto. You might feel like it's been hard kind of connecting with certain friends and kind of talking about some of the emotional stuff you're going through and like feeling like connected, I would assume. All right, so then we've got Brenda. Brenda, you are the MVP. All right, another Libra rising. 6:30:96, 2:45 p.m. in McAllen, Texas. So let's take a look. I want to look at the full moon. I didn't see anything from you. So was there a specific question that you had? Unless it was in the chat and I'm crazy. So if you're here, Brenda, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell you what I see. All right. We have got, wow, so Pluto's been squaring your north and your south node. Whoa. And Saturn's coming into a square with your sun. All right, so a couple things. Obviously, you know you're a Cancer, but you are a Libra rising. So this up and coming full moon is technically in your sign. Yes, you'll feel it, but it's going to kind of trigger like more of like the Scorpio rising horoscopes where it's more subconscious, healing, bringing stuff out in the open in relationships, because Venus is going to go into the 7th. So it can help you kind of heal and kind of clear stuff out relationship wise big time because it's in your 12th. But look at where the south node is in your chart, right where Venus is. So there's some kind of like closing the door on old relationship stories, especially about what is safe, what you value, who you should be with, what works, what doesn't work. And Venus is squaring Pluto. So it's about getting out of the past, getting into the future, and getting out of your comfort zone and how you've lived, what your family's done, what you have experienced maybe as a child, and like learning to like not carry that into relationships because it's very like generational with like the squares in your 4th house. It is possible that it is about people getting your goat, and where potentially people from the past can be making a reappearing act, especially over the next month. Now, Venus is going to make a couple interesting aspects when she's in Taurus. This is difficult when Venus squares Pluto, so that's going to be really like around April 3rd, give or take a day on each side. This will square and push you out of your comfort zone. It's also squaring your moon. And then she starts to ease up. Venus is then, things look a little bit smoother in mid-April, and then she's got some like financial shock, relationship shock. It could be about sudden romance and feeling like you're in love. Oh my God. That'll be around like the 3rd week. And then you're going to see Mercury and Mars, coming into your 7th house. A lot of Libra risings are going to have a lot of karmic things happen in relationships, and you're going to see a lot of like good and bad. It depends on what you have in your chart. It can be good where if you've done your due diligence to clear out past relationships, you can really show up and be present for this fresh start when it comes to dating, But on the other hand, if you haven't been playing fair, being diplomatic, meeting people halfway, it's like Saturn is going to slap you. It's going to be people who are going to be like, I'm done, or like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, or this isn't working for me. And people can project stuff onto you as well. No worries. If those of you guys are just kind of like popping up. I'm just kind of catching up. Okay, thanks, Grace. I just got on. Sorry, I forgot to ask a question. Well, did you have a question? I'm just going to talk about what's happening in your chart, but you're a later Libra rising. So it's going to be more like the Scorpio stuff that's going to be going on, like the relationship clearing, opening up to somebody new. You might have a dream about an old relationship that, is clearing them out, but they may pop back in. And then when you have Mars coming in conjunction with Chiron, would be a great time to be working with like a coach or be working with like a healer or like a therapist, like something like that might be kind of coming up for you in mid-May. And I also think that it really gets interesting because now it's going to be squaring your natal Saturn, your natal Neptune and Uranus. So there's something here about like, you know, how you were raised. Like Neptune Uranus is like unconventional, you know, living situations. You lived in communal situations. Your parents were divorced. You moved around a lot. You know, there's kind of like a checkered past with one of your parents, or there was just something that was kind of like, yeah, just different. And so what you'll see is going on during like Aries season and really next year too, planets go through your 7th house that are bringing up all this like relational kind of like, you know, lessons that's getting you out of old ways of living and like how you were raised, like dealing with your family, right? So the positive is like things are looking pretty good on the career front. With Jupiter going into your 10th house, you're going to see opportunities for expansion there, especially in like June and July. And then when the moon and Jupiter come together, you can see some really actually great things happening in August. It's just more like, yeah, relationship stuff. And I can tell you, like with the Libra risings who are going through this right now, they're either single and they're now realizing they want partnerships and they're like open to it. They just need to be kind of choosy. And for the ones that are in relationships, you know, if you are in one, relationships are definitely going to get tested a lot over this next month. But I think you're going to kind of narrowly escape. I think more of those quote unquote tests are going to actually come for you more next year when Saturn is fully in, like moving into your 7th house, which is going to be like, you know, spring through early summer of 2027. It's the full moon that's going to impact you more, you know, next month, not this one, the full moon in Scorpio. So it's more around the beginning of May. And when that's opposing the sun in your 7th, and you've got the ruler is Mars or Pluto, and it's squaring Pluto, and like Mars is conjunct Saturn, like more of the relational things I think are more likely to come up for you in May. This is more like what's going on with my emotions. Do I have time to get all the things done I need to get done? What's going on with my schedule, you know, kind of like requirements, and you know, do I need somebody to help me, or am I being vulnerable and telling people that, you know, I need some assistance, especially if it's anything health related. You know, a lot of Libra risings, the later ones have like Saturn and Mars going through their 6th. So it could be your relationships with coworkers, it could be your relationships with your healthcare team. And if you're needing to check in and be like, hey, I need some assistance with something, or I need a checkup, you know, I would do those things. But more of the relational dynamics are going to be so more next month. I would say Pluto square your north and your south node. Something has to either change with your home life or with your emotions. And, you know, Saturn squaring your sun right now. So, you know, it's also about kind of managing your schedule and like making time to get out, travel, explore, like feel like there is time to learn or to kind of expand. And that looks like it's a little tricky as well. Report back and let me know what happens with this full moon. This is the one that's going to be most interesting with some of the squares in your chart. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Brenda. All right, guys. Well, that was Friday night. I hope you guys had fun. I know it was a little bit of like a longer one this evening, so thanks for staying with me. I will be back here on Sunday. Make sure you watch my Astro Weather. We're going to talk about Venus and Taurus. If you guys want to see more about me, if you guys want to book a reading, if you want to learn astrology, I teach it. I also sell personal transit calendars that go right into your digital iPhone or your computer or your Google. Click the links below, head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. There you can find all that information. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on Friday night. I really appreciate it. And I hope to catch you guys next week for live tarot. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all back here very soon, okay? Take care.